The pregnancy test slipped from Elena's trembling fingers, clattering against the convenience store floor. 2 pink lines. Impossible. Her 6-month contract marriage to crime boss Adrian De Lorenzo was ending in 3 days. She'd be free, finally free from the dangerous world she'd stumbled into for money. But now, carrying his child, everything had changed. Her phone buzzed. "Penthouse, now, we need to talk." Elena's blood ran cold. Adrian never summoned her at midnight unless something had gone terribly wrong. She didn't know it yet, but her husband had just discovered a betrayal that would make leaving him the most dangerous thing she could possibly do. If you're enjoying this story, please hit the like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. Now, let's begin. Elena Vargas had exactly 72 hours left. 72 hours until the marriage that had saved her life would finally, mercifully end. 72 hours until she could disappear into the vast anonymity of New York City and pretend the last 6 months had never happened. 72 hours until she was no longer Mrs. Adrian De Lorenzo, wife to one of the most powerful and feared men in the northeastern United States. She stood in the fluorescent glare of a 24-hour convenience store on the Lower East Side, staring at the pregnancy test display like it might bite her. It was nearly midnight on a Tuesday, and the store was empty except for a bored clerk scrolling through his phone behind bulletproof glass. Outside, November rain hammered the sidewalk, turning the street into a river of reflected neon. Elena's hands shook as she reached for the cheapest box. Her nurse's scrubs, pale blue and wrinkled from a double shift at Mount Sinai, felt too tight suddenly, restrictive. She'd been telling herself for 3 weeks that the nausea was stress, that the missed period was because her body was finally relaxing after months of anxiety. But deep down, in that place where truth lives before we're ready to face it, she'd known. She paid cash, didn't make eye contact, shoved the box into her oversized purse and walked back out into the rain. Her studio apartment in Alphabet City was a 4th-floor walk-up in a building that should have been condemned years ago. The stairs creaked ominously under her weight. The hallway smelled like old cooking oil and someone's enthusiastic marijuana habit. But it was hers, or it would be, once the divorce was finalized and Adrian's final payment cleared. Inside, she locked the door with all 3 locks, dropped her purse on the sagging futon that served as her couch, and stood in the center of the 12-by-12 room that contained everything she owned. The bathroom was barely bigger than an airplane lavatory. Elena unwrapped the test with hands that wouldn't stop trembling, read the instructions twice, even though they were painfully simple, and did what needed to be done. 3 minutes. The box said to wait 3 minutes. She set a timer on her phone and sat on the closed toilet lid, staring at the water-stained ceiling. How had her life become this? 2 years ago, she'd been a nursing student with a bright future and a loving family. Then her father got sick, pancreatic cancer, aggressive and merciless. The medical bills piled up faster than mountains in a storm. When he died 8 months later, he left behind Elena, her heartbroken mother, and $200,000 in debt that the insurance companies refused to cover. Elena had tried everything: extra shifts, payment plans, small loans that became big loans with interest rates that should have been illegal. When her mother had a stroke from the stress and ended up needing round-the-clock care, Elena made choices she never thought she'd make. Dropped out of nursing school. Took a job as a hospital aide because it was the only medical work she could get without her degree. Sold everything of value her family had owned. It still wasn't enough. That's when Marcus, a friend from her old neighborhood who'd made very different life choices, told her about an opportunity. A businessman who needed a wife for public appearances. 6 months, no questions asked, complete discretion. $250,000. Enough to clear her debts and set her mother up in a decent care facility for years. What kind of businessman needs to buy a wife? Elena had asked. Marcus had given her a look that said she already knew the answer. The kind who doesn't ask questions about your debt, Elena. The kind who can make problems disappear. She should have walked away. Should have found another way, any other way. But desperation makes fools of us all, and Elena was nothing if not desperate. Her phone's timer shattered the memory. 3 minutes. Elena stood on legs that felt like water and picked up the test. 2 pink lines, clear as day, unmistakable, devastating, pregnant. The test fell from her nerveless fingers, clattering against the chipped tile floor. Elena gripped the edge of the sink, staring at her reflection in the spotted mirror. 24 years old, dark circles under her brown eyes. Her black hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exactly like what she was, exhausted, terrified, trapped. How had this happened? They'd been so careful. The marriage was a business arrangement, nothing more. Except for that one night, 3 months ago, when everything had gone catastrophically wrong. It had been after a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Elena had played her part perfectly. The demure wife in a borrowed designer gown making small talk with politicians and businessmen who probably had bodies buried in their backyards. Adrian had been different that night, less cold, less controlled. He'd actually talked to her in the car ride home, asked about her mother, remembered details from conversations she hadn't realized he'd been listening to. Back at his penthouse, he'd poured them both whiskey. They talked for hours, and somewhere in the whiskey-warm darkness, talking had turned to touching, and touching had turned to her bedroom door clicking shut behind them. In the morning, they'd both pretended it hadn't happened, went back to their careful distance, their professional courtesy. The arrangement would end as planned, and they would both move on with their lives. Except now there was this. 2 pink lines that connected them forever. Elena's phone buzzed in her pocket, making her jump. She pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from Adrian. Penthouse. Now. We need to talk. Her heart stopped. He never contacted her this late, never summoned her outside of their scheduled public appearances. In 6 months of marriage, he'd maintained rigid boundaries, separate bedrooms in his penthouse when she stayed over, minimal private interaction, absolute professionalism. Something was wrong. Elena grabbed her jacket and was halfway to the door before survival instinct kicked in. She couldn't go to him like this, not with the pregnancy test sitting on her bathroom floor like evidence at a crime scene, not when she didn't know what she was going to do about it. But another text came through. It's urgent, car is outside. She looked out her window. Sure enough, a black Mercedes sedan was idling at the curb, completely out of place in this neighborhood. Marcus stood beside it, watching her window. Whatever this was, it wasn't optional. Elena changed out of her scrubs into jeans and a sweater, shoved the pregnancy test into her purse. She couldn't leave it where her nosy super might find it, and headed downstairs. Marcus opened the car door for her. He was a big man, 6'4" and built like he bench-pressed cars for fun, but his eyes were kind. You okay, Elena? I don't know, she said honestly. What's this about? Not my place to say. Boss wants to see you, that's all I know. The drive to Adrian's penthouse in Tribeca took 20 minutes through rain-slick streets. Elena watched the city slide past the tinted windows and tried to calm her racing heart. Maybe this was about the divorce papers. Maybe he wanted to finalize everything early. Maybe... The car pulled into an underground garage. Marcus escorted her to a private elevator that opened directly into Adrian's penthouse. The doors slid open, and Elena stepped into a world that still felt utterly foreign to her despite the dozens of times she'd been here. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson River. Modern art that probably cost more than most people's houses hung on white walls. Everything was sleek, expensive, and cold, a perfect reflection of the man who owned it. Adrian stood by the windows, his back to her. Even in silhouette, he was striking, 6'2", broad-shouldered, moving with the controlled grace of someone who'd learned early that weakness gets you killed. He wore dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle. Thank you for coming, he said without turning around. His voice was deep, controlled, with just a trace of an accent that hinted at his Italian heritage. Did I have a choice? That made him turn. Adrian De Lorenzo had the kind of face that made people nervous, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes so dark they were almost black. At 32, he'd built an empire that operated in the shadows of legitimate business, and everyone knew it even if no one could prove it. He was handsome in the way that predators are beautiful, dangerous and compelling in equal measure. There's always a choice, Elena. He crossed to the bar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Though sometimes the alternatives are unpleasant. He offered her a glass. She didn't take it. I don't drink anymore. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. Adrian noticed everything. Since when? Recently. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the penthouse's perfect climate control. What's this about, Adrian? The divorce papers are ready to sign. 3 more days and this arrangement is over. That's what we need to discuss. He set both glasses down and turned to face her fully. The arrangement has become complicated. Elena's stomach twisted. Complicated how? Do you know Thomas Brennan? He's been my financial manager for 5 years. She shook her head. The names and faces of Adrian's business associates blurred together. She'd never paid much attention to the details of his world. Thomas has been skimming money from my operations, nearly $15 million over the past 2 years. Adrian's voice was perfectly calm, but Elena had learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the slight narrowing of his eyes. He was furious. He got greedy, got sloppy. I discovered the theft 3 days ago. What does this have to do with me? Thomas tried to cover his tracks by creating a paper trail that leads to you. The words didn't make sense at first. Elena stared at him, waiting for the punchline. That's insane. I don't know anything about your business. I've never touched your money except for the payments you made to clear my debts. I know that. Adrian moved closer, and Elena fought the urge to step back. But Thomas was clever. He created shell accounts in your name, forged documents showing regular withdrawals, even manufactured email correspondence discussing the transfers. To anyone investigating, it would appear that you've been systematically stealing from me since before we were married. Horror washed over her in cold waves. Why would he frame me? Because you're disposable. The bluntness of it stung, even though Elena knew it was true. You were always meant to be temporary. If suspicion fell on you after the divorce, I could claim I discovered your theft and cut you loose. No one would question it. But you said you know I'm innocent. I do. Adrian was very close now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody. I've known you for 6 months, Elena. I know you're many things, but a thief isn't one of them. Then tell people the truth. Show them Thomas is the real thief. It's not that simple. He turned away, running a hand through his dark hair. It was the first genuinely frustrated gesture she'd seen from him. Thomas is dead. He was murdered 2 days ago, shot twice in the head in his apartment. The police are calling it a robbery, but it wasn't random. Someone wanted him silenced. Elena's knees went weak. She sank onto the leather couch, her mind reeling. Who killed him? I don't know yet. But whoever it was now has all of Thomas's documentation showing you as the thief. Adrian poured himself another whiskey and downed it in one swallow. And they're going to use it. Use it how? He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, Elena saw something like regret in his eyes. There are people who want to hurt me, Elena. Rival organizations, enemies I've made over the years. If they believe you stole from me, they'll assume I care enough about the money to care about you. They'll come after you to get to me. The full horror of the situation crashed over her. You're saying I'm in danger because someone thinks I stole money I never touched? Yes. Then tell them the truth. Put out a statement. I don't know. Do whatever you people do to spread information in your world. And admit that someone inside my organization was able to steal $15 million without my knowledge. That I was compromised, vulnerable. Adrian's voice hardened. That kind of weakness gets you killed in my business, Elena. The second I show that kind of vulnerability, every rival will see an opportunity to strike. So what, I'm just supposed to hide for the rest of my life? No. He sat down across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. You're supposed to stay married to me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Absolutely not. Elena stood up, backing away. Our agreement was 6 months. I've played my part. I've done everything you asked. I stood beside you at fundraisers and smiled for cameras and pretended to be the loving wife. I'm done. If you leave now, you'll be dead within a week. The certainty in his voice stopped her cold. You're exaggerating. I'm not. Adrian stood as well, and suddenly the penthouse felt too small. My world doesn't forgive easily, Elena. Right now, as my wife, you have protection. My enemies know that touching you means war with me. But the moment those divorce papers are signed, you're just a woman who stole $15 million from a very dangerous man. Every lowlife looking to earn favor with my rivals will be hunting you. Then protect me anyway. Hire bodyguards. Hide me somewhere safe. That would only confirm that you matter to me, which makes you a permanent target. He moved closer, and Elena found herself backed against the window with nowhere to go. The only way to keep you safe is to make it clear that you're untouchable, and you're only untouchable as my wife. Elena's mind raced through options and found none. For how long? I don't know. Months at least. Maybe longer. Until I find who killed Thomas and recover the evidence he created. Until the situation stabilizes. And what do I tell my mother, my friends? I was supposed to be free, Adrian. I was supposed to get my life back. Something softened in his expression. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know you want out. But I'm asking you to trust me a little longer. Stay married to me, stay under my protection, and I swear I will keep you safe until this is resolved. I don't have a choice, do I? No, he said quietly. You don't. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the pregnancy test in her purse like a stone. She should tell him, should lay all her cards on the table, and let him know that this situation was infinitely more complicated than he realized. But looking at his face, at the cold calculation barely masked by concern, she knew what would happen. A child would make her even more valuable as a target, more vulnerable. He'd lock her away completely, cage her in the name of protection. And maybe he'd want the baby. Maybe he'd decide that a child was useful, a legacy to secure his empire. Elena couldn't risk it. Not until she understood what she was dealing with. I need guarantees, she heard herself say. New terms. Adrian raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating. You're asking me to risk my life. I think I've earned the right to negotiate. She forced herself to meet his eyes, to project a confidence she didn't feel. I want my own security team. People I can trust, not just your men. Done. I want regular updates on the investigation. No secrets, no keeping me in the dark about threats. Agreed. And I want my own space. I'm not living in this penthouse like a prisoner. I'll stay somewhere secure, but I need privacy. He considered this, then shook his head. Not possible. The penthouse is the most secure location I have. You'll stay here. Then I want my own room with a lock you don't have the key to. Elena, those are my terms. She crossed her arms. Take them, or find another way to keep me alive. A smile ghosted across his face, the first real smile she'd seen from him in months. You're tougher than you look. I've had a rough year. Fine. Your own room, your own security team, full transparency on the investigation. He extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Elena looked at his hand, at the strong fingers that had signed away her debts, and trapped her in a world she'd never wanted. She thought about the pregnancy test in her purse, about the impossible choice growing in her belly, about the life she'd planned that was dissolving like sugar in rain. Then she shook his hand. Deal. His fingers wrapped around hers, warm and strong, and for just a moment Elena felt something pass between them. Recognition, maybe, or the memory of that one whiskey-soaked night when they'd forgotten to be strangers. Adrian released her hand and stepped back. Pack whatever you need from your apartment. Marcus will take you first thing in the morning. You'll move in here tomorrow. That fast? The threat is real, Elena. The longer you're exposed, the greater the danger. He moved to a desk and pulled out a phone. New, still in the box. Use this from now on. Encrypted, secure. Your old number is compromised. She took the phone numbly. This was happening. This was really happening. There's one more thing, Adrian said, and something in his tone made her look up sharply. We'll need to be more convincing as a couple. More public appearances, more visible affection. If my enemies are watching, and they are, they need to believe this marriage is real. It was never supposed to be real. No, he agreed quietly. It wasn't. The weight of unspoken words hung between them. Elena remembered his hands in her hair, his mouth on her neck, the way he'd whispered her name in the darkness like a prayer. She remembered waking up alone, the sheets still warm where he'd been, and knowing without being told that it could never happen again. I should go, she said. It's late. Marcus will drive you home. He'll stay outside your building tonight, just in case. Just in case what? Adrian didn't answer, but his silence was more frightening than any words could have been. Elena made it to the elevator before her composure cracked. As the doors slid shut, she caught a glimpse of Adrian standing by the windows again, silhouetted against the city lights, looking utterly alone. The car ride back to her apartment passed in a blur. Marcus tried to make small talk, but Elena couldn't focus. Her mind kept circling back to the same impossible truth. She was pregnant with Adrian De Lorenzo's child, trapped in a fake marriage that had just become horrifyingly real and caught in the crosshairs of people who wanted to hurt her for a crime she didn't commit. Back in her apartment, Elena pulled out the pregnancy test and stared at those two pink lines until they blurred. She had to tell him. It was the right thing to do, the moral thing. But something held her back. Some instinct for self-preservation whispered that the moment Adrian knew about this baby, she would lose what little control she had left. He would make decisions for her, about her, without asking what she wanted. The child would become another piece on his chessboard, another asset to protect or weapon to wield. Elena couldn't let that happen. Not yet. Not until she understood what kind of man Adrian De Lorenzo really was beneath the expensive suits and controlled danger. She pulled out her new encrypted phone and stared at it. Only one number was programmed in. Adrian's. A direct line to the man who held her life in his hands. Her old phone buzzed, a text from her mother's care facility. "Your mother had a good day today. She asked about you." Tears blurred Elena's vision. Her mother, who'd raised her to be honest and brave and kind. What would she think of the choices Elena had made? What would she think of this mess her daughter had created? Another buzz, this time from an unknown number on her old phone. "I know what you did. You can't hide behind him forever." Elena's blood turned to ice. She stared at the message, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Someone knew. Someone was watching. She grabbed the new phone and called the only number in it. Adrian answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "I got a threat on my old phone. Someone knows about the money, about me staying with you." "Read it to me." She did, her voice barely steady. Silence on the other end, then. "Pack now. Don't wait until morning. Marcus is already on his way back. You're not spending another night in that apartment." "Adrian? This is not a debate, Elena. Someone is already moving against you. Pack what you need and be ready in 10 minutes. The line went dead. Elena stood frozen in her tiny apartment, surrounded by the remnants of her old life. She thought about running, thought about grabbing her passport and whatever cash she had and disappearing into the night. But where would she go? She had no money, no resources, no way to protect herself. And now she had a life growing inside her that depended on her survival. She started packing. 15 minutes later, Marcus was loading her 2 duffel bags into the Mercedes. Elena took one last look at the apartment that had been her sanctuary, her independence, her hope for a fresh start. Then she got in the car and let it carry her away. The penthouse was quiet when she arrived. Adrian met her in the foyer, still dressed despite the late hour. "Your room is ready," he said. "Third door on the left. It has its own bathroom and a lock, as promised." "Thank you." He caught her arm as she moved past him. "Elena, you're safe here. I give you my word." She looked at his hand on her arm, at the way his fingers circled her wrist completely. "Your word doesn't mean much to me, Adrian. We barely know each other." "Then get to know me." He released her but didn't step back. "We're going to be spending a lot of time together. Might as well make it bearable." "Is that what this is? Bearable. It could be worse. It could be better." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Yeah, it could." They stood there in the dim foyer, 2 strangers bound by a contract that had become a cage, and Elena felt the weight of all her secrets pressing down like stones. "Tell him," her conscience whispered. "Tell him about the baby." But she couldn't. Not tonight. Not when everything was already spinning out of control. "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Elena." She made it to her room and locked the door behind her. The space was beautiful. King bed with soft white linens, modern furniture, another wall of windows overlooking the city. A far cry from her studio apartment, a gilded cage was still a cage. Elena unpacked mechanically, hanging up the few clothes she owned, arranging her toiletries in the pristine bathroom. When there was nothing left to organize, she sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the pregnancy test one more time. 2 pink lines. A secret that grew heavier with every passing hour. She had 72 hours until the divorce was supposed to be finalized. 72 hours that had turned into an indefinite sentence. 72 hours that had become forever. Elena lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, one hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. Somewhere in this city, someone wanted her dead. Somewhere in this penthouse, a man who was her husband but not her husband planned to keep her alive by any means necessary. And somewhere inside her, a tiny cluster of cells was becoming a person who would bind her to Adrian De Lorenzo in ways no contract ever could. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but rest wouldn't come. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. This was her life now, suspended in fear, trapped between danger and protection, carrying a secret that could change everything. Tomorrow she would be strong. Tomorrow she would figure out how to survive this. Tomorrow she would decide what to do about the baby. But tonight, Elena Vargas simply lay in the darkness and wondered how her life had gone so wrong so fast. The city glittered outside her window, indifferent to her fear. And in the penthouse's main bedroom, Adrian sat on the edge of his own bed, staring at his phone. He'd lied to her tonight, not about the danger, that was horrifyingly real, but about his reasons for wanting her to stay. The truth was simpler and more complicated than murder and money. Adrian De Lorenzo had fallen in love with his fake wife, and he'd just been given an excuse to keep her, even if it destroyed them both. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a moment of pure panic before memory crashed back. The penthouse. Adrian. The threat. She was still wearing yesterday's clothes, having fallen asleep on top of the covers sometime after 3 a.m. Her phone, the new encrypted one, showed 9:47 a.m. She had 4 missed calls from Adrian and a text. Breakfast in the dining room when you're ready. We need to discuss security protocols. Security protocols. As if her life had become a military operation. Elena showered in the enormous marble bathroom, using products that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She dressed in jeans and a loose sweater, one of the few outfits she owned that didn't scream "broke hospital worker," and tried to ignore the nausea that rolled through her stomach in waves. Morning sickness. Another reminder of the secret growing inside her. The penthouse looked different in daylight, less intimidating, almost beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a sweeping view of the Hudson River, the water sparkling under November's sun. The decor was modern and masculine, but not cold. Warm wood accents, leather furniture worn soft with age, bookshelves lined with actual books instead of designer accessories. She found the dining room by following the smell of coffee. Adrian sat at the head of a long glass table, reading something on a tablet. He changed into dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made his shoulders look impossibly broad. His hair was still damp from a shower. He looked up when she entered. "Good morning. Did you sleep?" "Not much." Elena eyed the coffee pot on the sideboard with longing she couldn't act on. "You said something about security protocols?" "Sit. Eat first." He gestured to the spread laid out, fresh fruit, pastries, what looked like a vegetable omelet. "Mrs. Chen makes enough to feed an army. She'll be offended if you don't try something." "Mrs. Chen?" "My housekeeper. She comes in 3 times a week." Adrian poured himself more coffee. "She's very discreet and completely trustworthy. You don't need to worry about her." Elena sat and took a croissant just to have something to do with her hands. "How many people have access to this penthouse?" "Good question." He set down his tablet. "Mrs. Chen, Marcus, and my head of security, James Rodriguez. That's it. Everyone else requires advance clearance and escort." "What about your business associates? Other family members?" Something flickered across his face. "I don't have family, not anymore. And my business associates meet me at offices or neutral locations, never here. This is private space." The loneliness in those words made Elena's chest ache unexpectedly. She took a bite of croissant to cover her reaction. "You mentioned a security team for me." "James is putting it together now. 3 people, 2 for day shifts, 1 for night. All former military or law enforcement, all vetted personally by me." Adrian pulled up something on his tablet and turned it toward her. "These are their files. You can interview them if you want. Choose who you're comfortable with." Elena scanned the information. The profiles were thorough. Photos, backgrounds, service records. 2 men and 1 woman, all with impressive credentials. "I want the woman on my detail." Rebecca Santos, former NYPD detective, private security for the last 5 years. Good choice. He made a note. She can start tomorrow. What about today? Today you have Marcus and me. We're not leaving you unprotected. Elena set down her croissant, appetite gone. I can't live like this, Adrian. Constant guards, locked in a penthouse. I have a job, a mother in a care facility, a life. Had a job. He said it gently but firmly. I contacted Mount Sinai this morning and told them you needed emergency family leave. They were very understanding. Anger flared hot in her chest. You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife. You're in danger. And showing up at a public hospital where anyone could get to you would be suicide. He leaned forward. I know this is hard. I know it's not what you wanted. But until we identify the threat and neutralize it, your normal life is on hold. And my mother? I visit her 3 times a week. She'll worry if I don't come. We'll arrange secure visits. James will coordinate with the facility. Adrian's expression softened slightly. I'm not trying to cut you off from everyone, Elena. I'm trying to keep you alive long enough to have a life to go back to. The reasonable tone made it harder to argue. Elena forced herself to breathe, to think past the panic. Fine. What else do I need to know? You don't go anywhere without security. Not to the lobby, not to the parking garage, nowhere. If you need something, you tell Marcus or Rebecca and they'll get it or arrange an escort. So I'm a prisoner. You're protected. He held her gaze. There's a difference. Is there? Elena stood, needing to move, to pace. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks the same. Adrian was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was low. I know what it's like to lose freedom, to have your choices taken away. If there was any other option, I'd give it to you. But there isn't. Something in his tone made her look at him more closely. For the first time, Elena wondered about Adrian's past. How did someone become a crime boss? What choices had led him to this life? Before she could ask, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his whole demeanor changed, shoulders tensing, jaw tightening. I need to take this. Stay here. He disappeared into another room, leaving Elena alone with the remains of breakfast and her spiraling thoughts. She walked to the windows and stared out at the city. Somewhere out there, someone wanted her dead. Someone believed she'd stolen money she'd never touched, committed crimes she'd never dreamed of. And the only thing standing between her and that threat was a man she barely knew, trapped in a marriage that had never been real. Her hand drifted to her stomach again. In a few weeks, she'd start to show. In a few months, there would be no hiding this. She needed a plan, needed to figure out what she was going to do. But first, she needed to survive. Adrian returned 15 minutes later, his face carved from stone. Get dressed. Something nice but practical. We have to go out. Elena's heart jumped. You just said I couldn't go anywhere. I said you couldn't go anywhere without security. This is necessary. He was already moving toward his bedroom. Wear the blue dress from the gala last month. We need to look like a happy couple. Why? What's happening? He paused in the doorway. My attorney called. Someone leaked information about the theft to one of my business partners. There are questions about my organization's financial stability. I need to do damage control, and that means making a very public appearance with my devoted wife to show that everything is fine. Everything is not fine. No, Adrian agreed, but they don't need to know that. 30 minutes later, Elena stood in front of her closet, staring at the blue dress. It was beautiful, designer silk that draped perfectly, elegant without being flashy. She'd worn it once, to a charity event where she'd smiled until her face hurt and made small talk with people who terrified her. She could barely zip it now. The nausea had made her lose weight, but her breasts were already fuller, more sensitive. She'd need new clothes soon. Another problem to solve, another secret to keep. Elena applied makeup carefully, covering the dark circles under her eyes. Styled her hair into a sleek ponytail. Put on the diamond earrings Adrian had given her as part of her wife costume. Real diamonds, probably worth more than her car used to be. When she emerged, Adrian was waiting in the living room. He'd changed into a tailored charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. His eyes swept over her, and something flickered in their depths before his professional mask slammed back into place. You look perfect, he said. I feel like a fraud. Good. That means you're paying attention. He offered his arm. Let's go convince the world we're in love. The car ride to Lower Manhattan took 40 minutes. Marcus drove while another guard, a stone-faced man named Tony, sat in the passenger seat. Elena watched the city pass by through tinted windows and tried to calm her racing heart. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked. "Russo's. It's a restaurant in Little Italy owned by an associate of mine." Adrian's hand rested on the seat between them, close enough that she could feel its warmth. "Carlo Santino is having lunch there with several other business partners. We're going to join them, show that my marriage is stable, my life is stable, and the rumors about financial problems are baseless. And if they don't believe us, they will, because we're going to give the performance of our lives." The restaurant was tucked into a side street, unassuming from the outside, but elegant within. Red leather boots, white tablecloths, the smell of garlic and wine. A hostess greeted Adrian with a familiarity that suggested he was a regular. "Mr. De Lorenzo, your party is in the back room." Adrian's hand settled on Elena's lower back, warm through the thin silk of her dress. To anyone watching, it would look possessive, affectionate. Only Elena felt the tension in his fingers. The back room held a large table where 4 men sat with wine and antipasti. They looked up as Adrian and Elena entered, and Elena felt the weight of their assessment like a physical thing. "Adrian." The man at the head of the table stood. He was in his 60s, gray-haired and distinguished, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "We weren't expecting you." "Carlo." "I heard you were asking questions about my finances." Adrian pulled out a chair for Elena. "I thought I'd answer them in person." The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. Elena sat, hyper-aware of every eye on her. Adrian took the seat beside her, his thigh pressing against hers under the table. "We were concerned," Carlo said carefully. "There are rumors, money missing, theft from within your organization. Rumors started by my former financial manager, who is now dead because he tried to steal from me." Adrian's voice was cold, absolute. "The situation has been handled." "And the money?" "Being recovered, along with evidence of Thomas Brennan's betrayal." Adrian poured wine for himself and water for Elena. The small gesture, remembering she wasn't drinking, made something flutter in her chest. "My organization is stronger than ever. The theft was an anomaly, not a systemic problem." One of the other men leaned forward. "We heard he tried to frame someone." "Your wife?" Every eye turned to Elena. She felt like a deer in headlights, frozen and exposed. Adrian's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. "Thomas created false evidence to cover his tracks. He thought framing Elena would distract from his own crimes. He was wrong. And you're certain she had nothing to do with it?" The question came from a younger man, dark-haired and suspicious. Elena felt Adrian tense beside her. Before he could respond, she spoke. "I'm a hospital aide who married Adrian 6 months ago because I was drowning in medical debt." Her voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I don't know anything about his business beyond what I see at public events. I couldn't steal $15 million if I tried. I don't have the skills, the access, or frankly the imagination for that kind of crime." Silence. Then Carlo laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "She's honest. I like that. She's mine." Adrian's hand tightened on hers. "And anyone who comes after her comes after me." The message was clear. Elena was under his protection, untouchable. The meeting continued for another hour. Business was discussed, shipments and territories and deals Elena didn't fully understand. She played her part perfectly, the devoted wife who smiled and stayed quiet and let the men talk. But she watched, she listened, and she learned. These men were dangerous. They operated in shadows, made fortunes from activities that would send normal people to prison. And Adrian moved among them like a king among lords, respected and feared in equal measure. When they finally left, Elena's head was pounding. She stayed silent in the car until they were safely back in the penthouse. "You did well today," Adrian said as they rode the elevator up. Carlo was impressed. "I don't care about impressing your criminal friends. They're not my friends. They're business associates." He loosened his tie. "And impressing them keeps you safe." Elena kicked off her heels the moment they entered the penthouse. "How long do I have to keep doing this? Playing dress-up, attending meetings, pretending to be something I'm not?" "As long as it takes." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." Adrian poured himself a whiskey. Do you want the truth, Elena? The real truth? Always. I don't know how long this will take. I don't know who killed Thomas or who has the evidence he created. I don't know if this threat will last weeks or months or years. He downed the whiskey in one swallow. All I know is that while it exists, you stay close to me. You stay protected. You stay alive. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Elena sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. I hate this. I hate feeling helpless. I know. He sat beside her, careful to maintain distance. For what it's worth, you're handling it better than most people would. Most people haven't spent the last 2 years fighting to survive. No, they haven't. He studied her with those dark, penetrating eyes. Tell me about it. Your family, what happened? I know the basics from the background check, but I want to hear it from you. Elena hesitated. They'd spent 6 months in a fake marriage without ever having a real conversation. Sharing her pain felt intimate, dangerous. But maybe that's what she needed, to see him as a person instead of just a threat. My father was a contractor, she began slowly. Strong, stubborn, the kind of man who thought he could fix anything with his hands. When he got sick, he tried to hide it, kept working until he physically couldn't anymore. The memories still hurt like fresh bruises. By the time we got him to a doctor, the cancer had spread everywhere. Stage 4 pancreatic, death sentence. Adrian listened without interrupting. The treatments were brutal. Chemo, radiation, experimental drugs that cost a fortune and bought him maybe an extra month. I dropped out of nursing school to take care of him, but it wasn't enough. Elena's voice cracked. Nothing was enough. He died 8 months after diagnosis, and all we had to show for it was debt we could never repay. And your mother? Had a stroke 3 months later. The stress, the grief, it broke something in her brain. Now she's in a care facility that costs $4,000 a month, and she barely remembers who I am half the time. Elena wiped at her eyes angrily. So yeah, when someone offered me $250,000 to play pretend wife for 6 months, I took it. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed either. I did what I had to do to survive. There's no shame in survival. Adrian's voice was soft. I would have done the same thing. Would you? Or would you have found some other way? Some criminal shortcut? He smiled without humor. You think my choices were so different from yours? You think I wanted this life? Didn't you? No. The single word hung between them. But that's a story for another time. They sat in silence, two damaged people bound by circumstances neither had chosen. Elena felt the weight of her secret pressing down again. She should tell him about the baby. It was the right thing to do. But before she could find the words, Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression went deadly. It's James. Something's wrong. He answered. Talk to me. Elena couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Adrian's face change, concern bleeding into cold fury. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. Lock it down. Full security protocol. I'm on my way. He ended the call and was already moving toward the bedroom. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone except Marcus. What happened? Someone tried to breach the building's security. They didn't get in, but James found surveillance equipment in the parking garage. Adrian was pulling on a shoulder holster, checking a gun with practiced efficiency. Someone's been watching the penthouse. Watching you. Fear turned Elena's blood to ice. They know I'm here. Yes, he grabbed a jacket, which means they're planning something. I need to coordinate with my security team, set up countermeasures. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You stay here where it's safe. Safe? Elena stood, anger overriding fear. You just said someone's been watching this place. How is that safe? Because this penthouse is a fortress. Bulletproof glass, reinforced doors, panic room if needed. He moved close, gripping her shoulders. I know you hate feeling trapped, but right now this is the safest place in the city. Trust me. I don't trust you. I barely know you. Something painful flickered in his eyes. Then trust that I'm very good at keeping what's mine alive. He left before she could respond. Marcus appeared moments later, taking up position outside her door. Elena paced the penthouse like a caged animal, her mind racing. Someone was watching, planning, moving against her while Adrian scrambled to protect her. And she was stuck here, helpless, waiting for the next crisis. Her hand moved to her stomach again. How long before she couldn't hide this? How long before Adrian figured out that she was carrying his child? The afternoon dragged into evening. Marcus brought her food she couldn't eat. The sun set over the Hudson, painting the sky in shades of fire. And still, Adrian didn't return. Elena tried to sleep but couldn't. Every sound made her jump. She kept checking her phone, hoping for updates that never came. At midnight, she heard the elevator, footsteps in the hallway, the door opening. Adrian looked exhausted. His tie was gone, his shirt wrinkled, stubble darkening his jaw. But he was unhurt. "Are you okay?" she asked before she could stop herself. He seemed surprised by the question. "I'm fine." We secured the building, found and removed all the surveillance equipment, reviewed security footage but couldn't identify who planted it. "So they're still out there?" "Yes." He poured himself a whiskey with shaking hands, the first sign of weakness she'd seen from him. "But they won't get to you, Elena. I swear on my life they won't get to you." The ferocity in his voice made her breath catch. This wasn't just about protection or business or maintaining appearances. This was personal. "Why?" The question slipped out. "Why do you care so much? I'm just a woman you hired to play a role." Adrian downed his whiskey, set down the glass, and finally looked at her. Really looked at her. "Because that night 3 months ago, when we forgot to be strangers?" His voice was rough, raw. "That wasn't a mistake for me, Elena. That was the first real thing I'd felt in years, and I've been trying to stay away from you ever since because I knew that caring about you would make you a target, that my feelings would put you in danger." Elena's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Adrian, but I failed." He moved closer, and she could see the anguish in his eyes. "I tried to keep my distance, tried to maintain boundaries, tried to treat this like the business arrangement it was supposed to be. But I can't anymore. Not when someone's threatening you. Not when I might lose you before I ever really had you. This is crazy. We don't know each other. I know you're brave even when you're terrified. I know you sacrificed everything for your family. I know you hate being helpless, and you'd rather fight than hide." He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with unexpected gentleness. "I know that when you smile, really smile, not the fake one you use at events, it makes my chest ache, and I know I have no right to feel this way, but I do." Elena should step back, should establish boundaries, protect herself, but she was so tired of being alone, so tired of being afraid. And the truth was that she'd felt it too, that spark between them, that connection she'd tried so hard to ignore. "I'm pregnant." The words fell out before she could stop them. Adrian froze. "What?" "I'm pregnant. With your child. From that night." Elena wrapped her arms around herself. "I found out yesterday. I was going to tell you, but everything happened so fast, and I didn't know how you'd react, and I was scared." He kissed her. Not gentle, not tentative. Desperate and claiming, his hands cupping her face like she was precious, irreplaceable. Elena gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until she couldn't think, couldn't breathe, could only feel. When he finally pulled back, they were both shaking. "You're pregnant," he said, like testing out the words. "Yes." "With my baby." "Yes." A smile broke across his face, genuine, transformative. "And you were going to hide that from me? I didn't know if you'd want it. Want us." "Elena," he pressed his forehead to hers, "I want everything. You, the baby, a real marriage. Not a contract, not an arrangement. Real." "That's insane. People don't build relationships like this." "People like us do." His hands moved to her waist, protective and possessive. "We started backwards. We'll figure out the rest as we go." Elena knew she should be more cautious, should think this through. But standing in his arms, feeling safe for the first time in months, she couldn't make herself care about logic. "I'm still angry at you for making decisions without asking me." "I know. And I still want my own security team and privacy." "You'll have it. And I'm not giving up my life completely. I need to see my mother, maintain some independence. We'll work it out." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her mouth. We'll figure it all out together. Together. The word felt foreign and perfect all at once. They stood wrapped in each other as the city glittered beyond the windows, two broken people finding something whole in the wreckage of their lives. Elena knew the danger hadn't passed, knew that someone still wanted her dead, that threats still lurked in shadows. But for the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't facing it alone. Adrian pulled back slightly, his hand moving to her stomach with wonder. How far along? About 8 weeks? When did you start feeling sick? 3 weeks ago. I thought it was stress. He laughed quietly. We really did this backwards. Then his expression turned serious. This changes everything. The security, the threat level. They can't know about the baby. If word gets out, I know. I'll be an even bigger target. Not just that. His jaw tightened. A child makes you permanent. Makes us permanent. Some of my enemies would see that as weakness to exploit. The reality settled over them like a weight. Their moment of honesty, of connection, was already being swallowed by the dangers of his world. I won't let anything happen to either of you, Adrian said fiercely. Whatever it takes, however long this lasts, you're both under my protection now. Elena wanted to argue that she wasn't his to protect, that she could take care of herself. But the truth was, she needed him, needed his resources, his power, his ruthless determination to keep her alive. Okay, she said quietly. We do this together. Together, he agreed. They moved to the couch, and Elena found herself curled against his side, his arm around her shoulders. It felt natural in a way nothing between them ever had before. Tell me about your family, she said. You said you don't have any, but everyone comes from somewhere. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my father was the small-time enforcer for the Moretti family, violent, drunk, mean. He beat my mother until she was too broken to fight back. When I was 10, he went too far, put her in the hospital. She died 3 days later. Adrian, the Morettis took me in after that, raised me, trained me, made me what I am. His voice was flat, emotionless. I worked my way up through their organization, proved myself valuable. When the old boss died, I took over his territory, built my own operation from the ground up. Do you regret it? This life? Every day. He pulled her closer. But regret doesn't change the past. All we can do is try to build something better going forward. Is that what we're doing? Building something better? I hope so. They sat in comfortable silence, both processing the magnitude of what had just shifted between them. Outside, the city never slept. Inside, two people who'd started as strangers began the complicated work of becoming something more. Elena's eyes were growing heavy when Adrian spoke again. We should sleep. Tomorrow we start planning real security measures. And you need to see a doctor. Make sure the pregnancy is progressing normally. I can't exactly go to my regular OB. I have a doctor on retainer, completely discreet. He helped her stand. For now, rest, both of you. At her bedroom door, Elena hesitated. Adrian, thank you for telling me the truth tonight, about everything. We're past pretending, Elena. From now on, only truth between us. She kissed him goodnight, soft, lingering, and retreated to her room. As she settled into bed, one hand on her stomach, Elena realized that everything had changed in the span of a single conversation. She wasn't alone anymore, wasn't just fighting for her own survival. She had Adrian now, with all the complications and dangers that entailed, and growing inside her was a child who would bind them together forever. The future was terrifying and uncertain, but for the first time in longer than she could remember, Elena felt something that might have been hope. In his own room, Adrian stared at the ceiling and tried to process the bomb Elena had dropped. A baby. His baby. The one thing he'd never imagined having, the one piece of normal life he'd thought forever beyond his reach. And now someone was threatening her, threatening them both, threatening his child. The cold fury that thought sparked was unlike anything Adrian had ever felt. He'd killed before, would kill again if necessary. But this was different. This wasn't business or territory or reputation. This was family. His phone buzzed with an update from James. They'd traced the surveillance equipment to a supplier in Queens. We're working on identifying who'd purchased it. Progress, but not enough. Not fast enough. Adrian pulled up the files on Thomas Brennan again, searching for something he'd missed. A connection, a clue, anything that would lead him to whoever was behind this. Because he'd meant what he said to Elena. He would protect her and their child by any means necessary, would burn the whole city down if that's what it took. The game had changed. The stakes had never been higher. And Adrian De Lorenzo had never been more dangerous than when protecting what was his. The doctor arrived at 10 the next morning, a composed woman in her 50s named Dr. Sarah Chen, who carried a medical bag and asked no questions beyond the clinical ones. Elena sat on the edge of Adrian's guest bed while portable ultrasound equipment was set up, acutely aware of Adrian standing by the window, tension radiating from every line of his body. "Everything looks good," Dr. Chen said, moving the wand across Elena's abdomen. "Based on measurements, I'd say you're about 9 weeks along. Due date would be late June." June. Elena stared at the grainy image on the screen, at the tiny flickering heartbeat that seemed impossibly fast. That was her baby. Their baby. Real and growing and completely dependent on her survival. "The nausea should start easing in the next few weeks," Dr. Chen continued. "I'm prescribing prenatal vitamins and ginger supplements. Try to eat small meals throughout the day, stay hydrated. The usual recommendations." Adrian moved closer, his eyes fixed on the monitor. "Is she at higher risk, given the stress, the situation?" "Stress isn't ideal, but Elena is young and healthy. As long as she takes care of herself, there's no reason to expect complications." Dr. Chen printed several ultrasound images. "I'd like to see you again in 4 weeks, sooner if there's any bleeding or severe pain." When the doctor left, Elena held one of the ultrasound photos with shaking hands. "This is real. This is actually happening." "Yeah." Adrian sat beside her, taking the photo gently. "We're having a baby." The wonder in his voice made her throat tight. For all his danger and darkness, in this moment he looked almost vulnerable, like he couldn't quite believe something this good could happen to him. "We need to talk about what comes next," Elena said. "Not just security, everything. Where I'll live long term, how we co-parent if this doesn't work out between us. What happens if it's going to work out?" Adrian set the photo aside and took her hands. "I know it's fast. I know we're doing everything backwards, but I meant what I said last night. I want this, all of it." "You say that now. But what happens when the initial excitement wears off? When reality sets in and you remember that you never wanted to be tied down?" "Elena." He waited until she met his eyes. "I've spent 15 years building walls, keeping people at a distance, telling myself that attachment was weakness. And maybe it is. Maybe caring about you and this baby makes me vulnerable in ways I can't afford." His grip tightened. "But I don't care anymore. You're worth the risk." Before she could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. "It's James. I need to take this." He stepped into the hallway, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the ultrasound photo. She traced the tiny shape with one finger, marveling at how something so small could change everything so completely. Adrian's voice drifted through the door, too low to make out words but sharp with tension. When he returned, his face was grim. "We have a problem." James traced the surveillance equipment to a shell company owned by Paolo Russo. The name meant nothing to Elena. "Who?" "Brother of Vincent Russo, one of Thomas Brennan's associates." Adrian began pacing. "Vincent was found dead 2 days ago, shot in an apparent home invasion. But it wasn't random. Someone executed him." "You think it's connected to Thomas's death?" "I know it is. Vincent and Thomas were working together on something, and now they're both dead, and Vincent's brother is watching my penthouse." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "Paolo Russo is a hothead, violent, unpredictable. If he thinks I killed his brother—" "Did you?" Adrian stopped pacing and looked at her directly. "No. I had Vincent under surveillance because I suspected he was involved in the theft, but I didn't order his death. Someone's cleaning up loose ends, and they're trying to make it look like I'm responsible. To turn Paolo against you." "Exactly. And a grieving brother looking for revenge is exactly the kind of weapon someone would use to come after me." He pulled out his phone. "I need to meet with Paolo. Try to convince him I'm not his enemy." "That sounds incredibly dangerous." Everything about my life is dangerous. He was already texting someone. But if I can turn him, find out what Vincent knew before he died, maybe we can identify who's really behind this. And if you can't turn him, if he's already decided you're guilty. Adrian's silence was answer enough. Elena stood, fear coiling in her stomach. I don't want you going into a meeting with someone who might want you dead. It's not your choice. The hell it isn't. You just told me we're in this together, that you want a real relationship. That means I get a say in whether you walk into obvious traps. Something softened in his expression. You're right. I'm sorry. But, Elena, this is the only lead we have. If Paolo can tell me what Vincent knew, who he was afraid of, it might break this whole thing open. Or it might get you killed. I'll take every precaution. Neutral location, multiple guards, weapons. I'm not going in blind. Elena wanted to argue more, wanted to lock him in the penthouse where he'd be safe. But she could see the determination in his eyes. This was who he was, a man who faced threats head-on, who fought instead of hiding. Fine, she said quietly. But I have a condition. Name it. You take Marcus and at least 3 other guards. You wear a vest, and you keep your phone on the entire time so I can hear what's happening. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Deal. He spent the next hour coordinating with James, choosing the location, a warehouse in Red Hook that his organization owned, and arranging security. Elena watched him work, saw the cold competence that had built his empire. This was Adrian in his element, strategic and ruthless. But when he kissed her goodbye at the door, all she saw was the man who'd looked at their baby's ultrasound with wonder. Be careful, she whispered. Always am. He pressed his forehead to hers. Rebecca will be here in 20 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone else. Then he was gone, and Elena was alone with Marcus standing guard and fear eating through her chest like acid. Rebecca Santos arrived exactly on time, a compact woman in her 40s, with shrewd eyes and the controlled movements of someone trained in combat. She swept the penthouse methodically before introducing herself. I've read the briefing, she said, shaking Elena's hand. Someone's made you a target. My job is to make sure they fail. Have you worked for Adrian before? On and off for 3 years. He's demanding but fair, pays well and doesn't ask his people to take unnecessary risks. Rebecca settled into a chair with sight lines to both the elevator and the windows. You're in good hands. Elena wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that Adrian's security was as good as he claimed, but the fear wouldn't let go. She pulled out her phone and opened the call Adrian had initiated before leaving. She could hear car sounds, muffled conversation, the rumble of the engine. Can you hear me? Adrian's voice came through, slightly distorted. Yes. We're 10 minutes out. Paolo agreed to meet. That's either very good or very bad. I'm voting for good. A low chuckle. Optimist. The call went quiet except for ambient noise. Elena paced the penthouse, unable to sit still. Rebecca watched her with professional calm, but didn't comment. Finally, Adrian's voice. We're here. Warehouse looks clear from outside. Marcus and the team are doing a sweep now. Elena's heart hammered. She heard car doors opening, footsteps on concrete, echoing in the vast space of the warehouse. Clear, Marcus's voice reported. No signs of ambush. Stay sharp. Adrian's footsteps continued. Paolo, you here? Yeah. A new voice, younger and rougher than Adrian's. I'm here. Elena held her breath as furniture scraped, chairs being positioned. Then silence as the 2 men sat across from each other, each probably taking the other's measure. Thanks for meeting me, Adrian said. Didn't have much choice. You made it clear this was important. Paolo's voice dripped with hostility. So talk. Tell me why I shouldn't put a bullet in your head for what you did to Vincent. Because I didn't kill your brother. Bullshit. Vincent worked for you, stole from you. You found out and had him executed. Vincent did steal from me along with Thomas Brennan, but I didn't kill either of them. Adrian's voice was calm, reasonable. Someone's playing us against each other, Paolo. Someone who benefits from us being at war. Who? I don't know yet. That's what I'm trying to find out. Silence. Then Paolo laughed bitterly. You expect me to believe that? You're Adrian De Lorenzo. You know everything that happens in your organization. Clearly not, since $15 million went missing without my knowledge. The edge in Adrian's voice sharpened. Your brother betrayed me, but he was also scared. In the weeks before he died, Vincent was acting paranoid, looking over his shoulder. Who was he afraid of? How should I know? Vincent didn't exactly share his criminal activities with his baby brother. But you knew he was involved in something. You knew he was working with Thomas Brennan. More silence. Elena could picture them, two dangerous men circling each other verbally, each looking for weakness. Vincent called me the night before he died, Paolo finally said. Told me if anything happened to him, I should know it wasn't an accident, that someone was cleaning house. Did he say who? No, he was too scared. Said knowing the name would put me in danger too. Paolo's voice cracked slightly. Next morning, cops found him dead in his apartment. 2 shots to the head, professional hit. And you assumed I ordered it. Who else would want him dead? Whoever Vincent was afraid of. Whoever's behind the theft and framing Elena. Adrian paused. Think about it, Paolo. If I wanted Vincent dead, why would I make it look like a home invasion? Why not just make him disappear like I do with people who really cross me? The logic was sound, and Elena could hear Paolo processing it. You said someone framed your wife? Paolo asked. Thomas created false evidence, making it look like Elena stole the money. When he died, that evidence went to whoever killed him. Now they can use it to paint me as either a fool who married a thief or a victim seeking revenge. And you think Vincent was killed by the same person? I know he was. The question is why? What did Vincent know that made him dangerous? Paolo was quiet for a long moment. There was something. Vincent mentioned it once when he was drunk. Said Thomas had found out about a deal, something big that would change everything. But Vincent wouldn't give details. What kind of deal? No idea. But he was excited about it. Said they'd finally have enough money to get out, start fresh somewhere the families couldn't reach them. Elena's mind raced. A deal big enough to steal $15 million. Big enough to kill for. Did Vincent keep records? Adrian pressed. Files, documents, anything that might explain what they were into? If he did, the cops took it all when they searched his apartment. Cops don't look that carefully at home invasions gone wrong. There might be something they missed. Adrian's chair scraped. I need access to Vincent's place. It's still a crime scene. Since when does that stop people like us? Paolo laughed without humor. You've got balls, I'll give you that. Come to me claiming innocence, then ask me to help you break into my dead brother's apartment. I'm asking you to help me find who really killed him. Don't you want justice for Vincent? Justice. Paolo spat the word like poison. Vincent and I grew up watching our father get screwed by people like you. Powerful men who took what they wanted and left guys like us to pick up the pieces. So no, I don't give a damn about your version of justice. The temperature in the conversation dropped 20 degrees. Elena's hands clenched around her phone. Then what do you want? Adrian asked, his voice dangerously soft. I want the truth. I want to know who killed my brother and why. And if it really wasn't you... Paolo paused. If it wasn't you, then I want to help you destroy whoever it was. Elena released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. We have a deal, Adrian said. On one condition. I meet the wife, the one supposedly framed for the theft. No. Adrian's refusal was immediate and absolute. She's not part of this. She's the center of it. If someone really went through the trouble of framing her, I want to know why. Want to see if she's the innocent victim you claim or something else entirely. Not happening. Then we're done here. Chairs scraped as Paolo stood. You want my help? You give me access to the woman at the heart of this whole mess. Otherwise, I go back to assuming you're lying and start planning your funeral. The silence stretched taut as wire. I'll ask her, Adrian finally said. But the decision is hers. Fair enough. You've got 24 hours. Footsteps echoed as Paolo left. More silence. Then Adrian's voice, quiet and strained. You heard all that? Every word, Elena said. You don't have to meet him. I can find another way. Elena thought about the baby growing inside her, about the unknown enemy circling them, about the fact that every moment this threat existed was a moment she and her child were in danger. No, she said. If meeting me helps convince him you're innocent, helps us find who's really behind this, then I'll do it. Elena, we're in this together, remember? That means I don't hide while you take all the risks. She took a steadying breath. Set up the meeting. But Adrian, I want Rebecca with me the entire time. Done. Relief flooded his voice. I'm coming home. We'll plan this carefully. Make sure you're protected. The call ended. Elena set down the phone and found Rebecca watching her with new respect. You've got guts, the security guard said. Meeting Paolo Russo is no joke. Kid's got a temper and a body count. How bad? Bad enough that even Adrian's people give him space. He's not part of any organization, works freelance, makes him unpredictable. Rebecca checked her weapon, a habitual gesture. But if anyone can handle him, it's your husband. My husband. The words still felt strange, but less like a lie than they had a week ago. Adrian returned an hour later, sweeping into the penthouse with Marcus and 2 other guards. He went straight to Elena, cupping her face and searching her eyes. You sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He kissed her, hard and possessive. When he pulled back, his eyes were fierce. Nothing happens to you. I don't care what it takes, what I have to do. You and our baby come out of this safe. We will, all 3 of us. They spent the afternoon planning. The meeting would take place at a restaurant in Brooklyn, public enough to discourage violence, but private enough for real conversation. Rebecca and Marcus would be at the next table, armed and ready. Adrian would be across from her, and James would have men positioned outside. Paolo's bringing his own security, Adrian said, studying the restaurant's layout on his tablet. 2 guys, both ex-military, they'll be armed. So everyone's armed except me. Fantastic. You'll have this. He handed her a small device that looked like a car key fob. Panic button. You press it, and every guard in the building converges on your location in seconds. Elena turned the device over in her hands. Her life had become something out of a thriller movie. Panic buttons and armed guards and meetings with dangerous men. 6 months ago, her biggest worry had been picking up enough shifts to make rent. I hate this, she said quietly. I hate that our baby is going to be born into this world, surrounded by violence and danger. Adrian pulled her close, his hand settling protectively over her stomach. It won't always be like this. Once we identify the threat and eliminate it, things will be different, safer. Will they? Or is this just your normal and I need to accept that? The question hung between them, heavy with implications about their future. I don't know, Adrian admitted. I've been in this life so long, I'm not sure what normal looks like anymore. But I want to try. For you, for our child. I want to build something better than what I've had. That's going to require real change, Adrian, not just promises. I know. He kissed her forehead. One crisis at a time. First, we survive this. Then we figure out how to live. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one hand on her stomach, feeling the weight of tomorrow's meeting pressing down. What if Paolo saw through her? What if he decided she was lying, that she really was involved in the theft? What if he decided to hurt her to get to Adrian? Around 2 a.m, she gave up on sleep and padded to the kitchen for water. She found Adrian at the dining table, surrounded by papers and files, his laptop open. Can't sleep either? She asked. He looked up, dark circles under his eyes. Trying to find the connection. There's something I'm missing, some piece that ties this all together. Elena sat beside him, looking at the documents. Walk me through it. Sometimes fresh eyes help. Adrian hesitated, then began laying out the timeline. Thomas Brennan had started stealing about 2 years ago, small amounts at first that gradually increased. Vincent Russo had joined him about 6 months later. Together, they'd siphoned $15 million through a complex web of shell companies. But here's what doesn't make sense, Adrian said, pointing to a spreadsheet. The money didn't stay in their accounts. It was moved again, transferred to offshore holdings that neither Thomas nor Vincent controlled. So someone else was pulling the strings. Exactly. Thomas and Vincent were middlemen, probably taking a cut but not controlling the operation. He pulled up another document. And then there's the timing. Thomas dies, and 3 days later Vincent dies. Both executed professionally. That's not coincidence. Whoever's really behind the theft killed them to cover their tracks. Right. But why now? They'd been stealing for 2 years. Why suddenly clean house? Elena thought about it, her mind working through possibilities. Maybe because you discovered the theft. Maybe Thomas panicked and told whoever was really in charge. and that person decided to eliminate the liability. Adrian stared at her. That would mean someone knew I'd found out about the theft before I even confronted Thomas. Is that possible? Could you have a leak in your organization? His expression darkened. I've been so focused on external threats I didn't consider internal ones. But yeah, it's possible. Someone close enough to know my business, to know when I discovered the theft. Who has that kind of access? My inner circle. James, Marcus, my accountant, my attorney. He stood, began pacing. But I've known these people for years. I trust them with my life. Maybe that's why you haven't seen it, because you trust them. The idea clearly disturbed him. Adrian had built his organization on loyalty, on the bonds forged through shared danger and mutual benefit. The thought that someone inside his circle could betray him struck at the foundation of everything he'd created. I need to audit everyone, he said. Financial records, communications, movements. If there's a traitor, I'll find them. And then what? His eyes were cold as winter. Then I deal with them the way I deal with all betrayals. Elena shivered at the ice in his voice. This was the Adrian that enemies feared, ruthless, unforgiving, deadly. She'd known intellectually that he'd killed people, that his hands weren't clean, but seeing that coldness directed at the possibility of betrayal made it visceral and real. Hey, she stood, moving to him. Don't lose yourself in the darkness. We need you focused, not consumed by revenge. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. Sometimes the darkness is all I know. Then I'll be your light. We'll be your light. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. This baby deserves a father who's more than just anger and violence. Adrian's hand spread over her stomach, protective and gentle. You're right. I know you're right. It's just the thought that someone I trusted could do this, could put you in danger. I know. But we'll figure it out together. We'll find the truth and we'll handle it. The right way. He nodded against her hair. They stood like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other, before exhaustion finally drove them both to bed. The next morning arrived too quickly. Elena dressed carefully for the meeting with Paolo. Nice jeans, a soft sweater that hid her slightly thickening waist, minimal jewelry. She wanted to look approachable, honest, not like someone who'd steal millions. Rebecca arrived at noon, dressed in dark slacks and a blazer that concealed her weapon. She walked Elena through final safety protocols, showing her hand signals and exit routes, drilling her on what to do if things went wrong. Stay calm, answer questions honestly, and keep your hands visible at all times, Rebecca instructed. Paolo will be watching for tells, signs you're lying. Just be yourself and you'll be fine. And if I'm not fine? Then I put 3 rounds in his chest before he can touch you. The matter-of-fact delivery should have been disturbing. Instead, Elena found it oddly comforting. The drive to Brooklyn took 40 minutes through midday traffic. Adrian sat beside her, hand clasped with hers, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Marcus drove while Rebecca sat in the passenger seat, both guards alert for threats. The restaurant was a small Italian place tucked into a residential street. They arrived early, and James's team swept it thoroughly before giving the all-clear. Adrian escorted Elena inside, his hand on her lower back, eyes scanning constantly. Paolo Russo was already there, sitting at a corner table with clear sightlines to the door. He was younger than Elena expected, maybe 25, with dark hair and his brother's eyes. 2 large men flanked him, their jackets bulging with poorly concealed weapons. Mr. Russo, Adrian said, his voice carefully neutral. Thanks for meeting us. Didn't think you'd actually bring her. Paolo's gaze locked on Elena, assessing and cold. So you're the woman worth all this trouble. Elena lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated. I'm the woman who got framed for a crime I didn't commit. If that makes me trouble, so be it. A flicker of surprise crossed Paolo's face. He gestured to the chairs across from him. Sit. Let's talk. They settled into a tense tableau, Adrian and Elena on one side, Paolo on the other, guards from both parties watching each other like predators. A waiter appeared, took drink orders with trembling hands, and fled. Tell me about yourself, Paolo said to Elena. How does a woman like you end up married to someone like De Lorenzo? Desperation and bad choices. Elena kept her voice level. My father died of cancer, left my family in debt. Adrian offered me a way out. 6 months of playing his wife in public, and I'd have enough money to take care of my mother and start over. A business arrangement. Yes. But you're still here. 6 months is up. Elena glanced at Adrian before answering. The arrangement got complicated. Someone made me a target, and Adrian's protection became the only thing keeping me alive. Convenient, Paolo leaned back. From Adrian's perspective, I mean. Keeps you close, under his control. I'm not under anyone's control, Elena said sharply. I'm here because I want the same thing you do, to find who killed Thomas and Vincent and why they framed me for their crimes. Paolo studied her for a long moment. You really didn't know anything about the theft? I didn't even know what Adrian did for a living until after we were married. I was a hospital aide trying to survive. I don't have the skills or knowledge to steal $15 million from anyone, let alone from an organization like his. But you could have been a pawn, someone manipulating you without your knowledge. The thought chilled her. How? Identity theft, forged documents, using your information without your permission. Paolo pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. I did some digging after our meeting yesterday, found some interesting things. Elena opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were bank statements showing an account in her name, one she'd never opened, transfers, deposits, withdrawals, all documented with her signature. This isn't real, she breathed. I never signed these. The signatures match your DMV records. Your social security number is correct. As far as any investigator would be concerned, this is your account. Adrian took the documents, his jaw tight with fury. This is what Thomas created, the false trail. Maybe. Or maybe it's real, and she's playing you both. Paolo's eyes never left Elena's face. I need to know which it is. It's fake, Elena said forcefully. I've never seen these accounts before in my life. I don't even know what bank this is. Metropolitan Savings and Trust. Small private bank in Queens, caters to people who want discretion. I've never been to Queens except to visit my mother's care facility. Paolo pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. This is surveillance footage from the bank 3 months ago. Tell me that's not you. Elena stared at the image. The woman in the photo had her face, her build, her hair. She wore a business suit Elena had never owned and carried a briefcase she'd never touched. But the resemblance was uncanny. That's not me, she whispered. I swear it's not me. How can you be sure? Maybe you forgot. I was working double shifts 3 months ago, picking up every hour I could get because my mother's facility raised their rates. Desperation crept into her voice. Check my employment records. I was at Mount Sinai from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. most days. I couldn't have been at a bank in Queens. Adrian was already on his phone. James, I need employment records for Elena Vargas from Mount Sinai, specifically the week of August 15th. Pull security footage from the hospital if you can. He ended the call and looked at Paolo. We'll have proof within the hour. Or you'll have doctored records proving whatever story you want to tell. Then send your own people to verify. Call the hospital yourself. Do whatever you need to do to satisfy yourself that Elena is telling the truth. The tension at the table could have been cut with a knife. Elena felt Paolo's scrutiny like a physical weight, saw the calculation in his eyes as he decided whether to believe them. Finally, he nodded slowly. Okay, let's say I believe the woman in that photo isn't really you. That means someone went through considerable effort to make it look like you. Why? To frame her when the theft was discovered, Adrian said. To make it seem like I either didn't know my own wife was stealing from me or that I was covering for her. Either way, it makes me look weak, vulnerable. Perfect target for rivals looking to make a move. Or, Paolo countered, it's exactly what it looks like, and you're both lying to cover up the fact that you got caught. If that were true, why would I meet with you at all? Adrian's voice hardened. Why not just eliminate you like you think I eliminated Vincent? Because I'm not stupid enough to come to this meeting without insurance. If I don't walk out of here alive, files get released to every major organization on the East Coast. Files that detail everything Vincent told me about your operation, about the theft, about all of it. Adrian smiled without warmth. Then we're at a stalemate. You can't move against me without consequences, and I can't move against you without painting a target on my back. Guess that means we're going to have to actually trust each other. Paolo didn't sound happy about it. Fine. We work together to find who really killed Thomas and Vincent. We find out who framed your wife, and when we do, we split the 15 million and go our separate ways. Keep the money, Adrian said. I just want the people responsible. Something shifted in Paolo's expression. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. You'd really give up 15 million for revenge? For justice, Adrian corrected, and to protect my family. Paolo's gaze flicked to Elena, seeing her with new eyes. There's more to this than a business arrangement, isn't there? Elena took Adrian's hand, felt his fingers interlock with hers. Yes, there is. Congratulations. You've managed to make this even more complicated. Paolo pulled out a flash drive and tossed it on the table. That's copies of everything I found in Vincent's apartment before the cops sealed it. Financial records, emails, some encrypted files I haven't been able to crack. Maybe your people can make sense of it. Adrian pocketed the drive. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If this leads nowhere, if I find out you've been playing me, our deal is off, and we're back to being enemies. Understood. They parted ways with wary nods, neither side trusting the other but both bound by necessity. In the car, Elena finally allowed herself to shake, reaction setting in. That was terrifying, she said. You were perfect. Adrian pulled her close. Calm, honest, exactly what we needed. He still doesn't trust us. No, but he's willing to work with us, which is more than I hoped for. Back at the penthouse, James was already analyzing the contents of the flash drive. He'd set up multiple monitors in Adrian's office, data scrolling across screens in a cascade of information. Most of this is standard financial records, James said without preamble, but there's one encrypted file that's different, military-grade encryption, way beyond what Thomas or Vincent would have access to. Can you crack it? Given time, maybe, but there's a shortcut. James pulled up a document. I found a reference to the file in Vincent's emails. He called it the insurance policy. Whatever's in there, he thought it was valuable enough to keep hidden. Keep working on it, Adrian ordered. Priority 1. As James worked, Adrian pulled Elena into the bedroom, closing the door behind them. The stress of the day had carved lines into his face, made him look older than his 32 years. Are you okay? He asked, hands on her shoulders. That was a lot. I'm fine. Scared, but fine. She leaned into him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Do you really think Paolo's information will help? I hope so. Because right now, it's the only lead we have. They stood together in the quiet of the bedroom, the sounds of the city muted by bulletproof glass. Outside, the sun was setting over the Hudson, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. It should have been beautiful. Instead, all Elena could think about was the danger closing in around them, the unseen enemy moving in shadows. The baby chose that moment to make its presence known, a flutter of movement so faint Elena almost missed it. She gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. What? Adrian's concern was immediate. What's wrong? Nothing. I think I felt the baby move. His eyes widened. He placed his hand over hers, waiting. Are you sure? No, maybe. It was so small, like a butterfly. She laughed, sudden joy breaking through the fear. Our baby Adrian, moving and growing and real. He pulled her into a kiss, tender and fierce. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. We're going to survive this, he said. All three of us. I swear it. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love and determination would be enough to overcome the threats surrounding them. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that some enemies couldn't be defeated with bullets and guards. Some enemies were patient, subtle, willing to wait for the perfect moment to strike. And somewhere in the city, that enemy was watching, planning, moving pieces into place for a final devastating move. The encrypted file took James 3 days to crack. 3 days of mounting tension, of Elena feeling like a caged animal pacing the penthouse, while Adrian coordinated security and chased down leads that went nowhere. 3 days of watching the man she'd married transform from the tender father-to-be who'd marveled at their baby's heartbeat into the cold strategist who made enemies disappear. She saw both sides of him now, saw him take a call at 2 a.m. and speak in clipped sentences about handling a situation before returning to bed and pulling her close with hands that trembled slightly. Saw him order Marcus to increase patrols around her mother's care facility, then spend 20 minutes on the phone with the facility director arranging private nurses and upgraded security because Mrs. Vargas deserves the best care available. Saw the darkness and the light warring inside him and wondered which would win. On the third night, James burst into the penthouse at 11 p.m., his normally composed face electric with triumph. "I cracked it," he announced, not bothering with pleasantries. "The encrypted file. You need to see this now." They gathered in Adrian's office. Adrian, Elena, James, and Marcus. Rebecca stood by the door, alert for threats. James pulled up the file on the main monitor, and Elena's breath caught. It was a video. Vincent Russo sat in what looked like his apartment, speaking directly to the camera with the nervous energy of a man who knew his life was in danger. "If you're watching this, I'm probably dead," Vincent began. His voice shook. "Thomas is dead too, most likely. We got in over our heads with something we didn't understand, and now they're cleaning up loose ends." Adrian leaned forward, his entire body tense. "Who's they, too?" On screen, Vincent continued. "It started 2 years ago when Thomas discovered irregularities in De Lorenzo's accounts. Not theft exactly, but money moving in ways that didn't make sense. He brought me in to help trace it, and that's when we found the real operation." "What operation?" Elena whispered. "Someone inside Adrian's organization has been using his infrastructure to launder money for the Kozlov Bratva," Vincent said. "Millions of dollars, maybe tens of millions over the years. They embedded their operation so deep inside his legitimate businesses that even De Lorenzo didn't know it was happening." The room went deadly silent. The Kozlov Bratva, Russian organized crime, ruthless and powerful. Elena had heard enough from Adrian to know they were major players, the kind of enemy that could destroy everything he'd built. "Thomas and I thought we could skim some of the money without anyone noticing," Vincent continued, shame evident in his voice. "Just enough to get out, start over. But someone figured out what we were doing, someone high up in De Lorenzo's organization, someone who's been working with the Bratva all along." "Who?" Adrian's voice was barely above a growl. Vincent leaned closer to the camera. "I don't have proof, but Thomas thought it was someone in the inner circle. Someone with access to everything, finances, security, operations. He was going to confront them the night he died." The video cut to black. Silence filled the office like a physical presence. "Someone in my inner circle," Adrian said slowly, each word precise and deadly, "has been using my organization to launder Russian mob money. For years. And when Thomas discovered it," James added, "they killed him and Vincent to protect their operation. Then framed Elena to make it look like a simple theft." Marcus shook his head. "That's cold." Adrian stood abruptly, began pacing like a caged predator. "My inner circle. That's you, James. You, Marcus, my attorney, my accountant, my logistics coordinator." He stopped, facing them. "One of you has betrayed me." The accusation hung in the air. Marcus and James exchanged glances, both men visibly shaken. "It's not me," James said firmly. "I've been with you for 8 years, Adrian. I've bled for you, killed for you. I wouldn't—" "Then prove it. Give me access to everything, your finances, your communications, your movements, all of it." "Done." James didn't hesitate. "Marcus?" "Same," Marcus agreed immediately. "Whatever you need to clear us." Adrian studied them both, searching for deception. Elena watched the exchange with a sinking feeling. These were men who'd fought beside Adrian, who'd protected him and served him loyally. If one of them was the traitor, it would destroy him. "What about your accountant?" Elena asked. "Or your attorney?" "David Chen has been my accountant for 6 years. Peter Morrison, my attorney for 10. Adrian resumed pacing. "Both have complete access to my financial operations. Both would have the knowledge and ability to hide a laundering scheme." "We need to investigate them without tipping anyone off," James said. "If the traitor realizes we're onto them, they'll either run or strike first. Or both." Adrian pulled out his phone. "I'm calling an emergency meeting for tomorrow, all senior personnel. We'll say it's about the theft investigation, about clearing Elena's name publicly. Whoever the traitor is, they'll have to attend or risk raising suspicion." "That's dangerous," Marcus warned. "Bringing everyone together in one place." "It's also an opportunity. We'll have eyes on everyone, can monitor their reactions when we present Vincent's video." Adrian's smile was sharp and cold. Guilty people reveal themselves under pressure. Elena's stomach churned. You're going to show them the video? Won't that put us in more danger? We're already in danger. This just forces the traitor's hand. He moved to her, cupped her face gently. I won't let anything happen to you. Tomorrow you stay here with Rebecca and half my security team. The penthouse goes into full lockdown. And if something goes wrong at the meeting, if the traitor has backup, if the Bratva, then I deal with it. His voice was absolute. This ends tomorrow, Elena, one way or another. The meeting was set for 2 p.m. at Adrian's primary warehouse in Brooklyn. Elena spent the morning trying not to panic, watching Adrian prepare with the methodical precision of a man going to war. He wore a bulletproof vest under his suit jacket, checked his weapon twice, gave Rebecca explicit instructions about protecting Elena no matter what happened. If things go bad, he told Rebecca quietly, you get her out. Take her to the safe house in Connecticut, the one only you and I know about. Keep her there until I come for her. And if you don't come? Rebecca asked bluntly. Then contact my attorney. He has instructions for her and the baby. Adrian kissed Elena goodbye, long and deep. I love you, both of you. Come back to us, Elena whispered against his mouth. Whatever happens, you come back. Always. Then he was gone, and Elena was alone with Rebecca and 2 guards she barely knew, locked inside a penthouse that felt more like a tomb than a sanctuary. She tried to distract herself, watched television without seeing it, attempted to read, finally gave up and stood by the windows, watching the city go about its business while her world balanced on a knife's edge. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Meeting starting. Stay safe. Elena stared at the message, willing it to contain more information, some reassurance that everything would be okay. But she knew better. In Adrian's world, nothing was guaranteed except violence and consequences. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. Elena's phone remained silent. This is taking too long, she said to Rebecca. Meetings like this can run long. Lots of posturing and politics. But Rebecca checked her own phone, frowning at the lack of updates. Another 30 minutes. Elena's nerves were screaming. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones, the same instinct that had kept her alive through 2 years of desperate survival. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. Rebecca was beside her instantly. Don't answer it. It could be Adrian. If it was Adrian, it would show his number. Rebecca tried to take the phone, but Elena answered before she could. Hello? Mrs. De Lorenzo. The voice was male, accented, unfamiliar, Russian. We need to talk about your husband. Elena's blood turned to ice. Who is this? Someone who has something Adrian wants very much. He came to a meeting today, asked very dangerous questions, questions that upset my employers. Where is he? Fear clawed up her throat. What did you do to him? He's alive, for now. Whether he stays that way depends entirely on you. Rebecca was already on her other phone, frantically texting. The guards moved to the windows, weapons drawn. What do you want? Elena forced the words past her terror. You. In exchange for your husband. The voice was calm, almost pleasant. Come alone to the address I'm about to send you. You have 2 hours. If you're late, if you bring anyone with you, if you contact the police, Adrian De Lorenzo dies screaming. 2 hours, Mrs. De Lorenzo. The clock starts now. The line went dead. A text came through immediately. An address in Red Hook, an abandoned industrial area. Rebecca grabbed Elena's shoulders. You're not going. This is obviously a trap. They have Adrian. We don't know that. This could be a trick to get to you. And if it's not? If he's really in danger and I don't go? Elena pulled away. I can't risk his life, Rebecca. I won't. Then we go in with a full team, tactical approach, overwhelming force. They said come alone. They also said they'd kill him if you didn't. You think they're planning to let either of you walk away? Rebecca's voice was sharp. Elena, think. They want you specifically. Why? To use you against Adrian, to leverage his child, to complete whatever plan they started when they framed you. Elena's hand moved to her stomach. The baby. Of course, a child made her permanently valuable, a weapon to control Adrian for years to come. I still have to go, she said quietly. But you're right about one thing. I'm not going alone. She called Paolo Russo. He answered on the second ring. This is unexpected. They took Adrian. Someone from the Bratva called me, demanded I trade myself for him. Elena spoke quickly, urgency bleeding through. I need your help. Silence. Then, why would I help you? Because we had a deal. Because if Adrian dies, you never find out who really killed Vincent. Because, her voice cracked. Because I'm pregnant with his child and I can't do this alone. More silence. Elena waited, heart hammering, knowing she was gambling everything on a man who had every reason to refuse her. Send me the address, Paolo finally said. I'll meet you there. And Elena? Bring your security guard. You're going to need her. 20 minutes later, Elena was in a car with Rebecca, racing toward Red Hook against every instinct of self-preservation. Rebecca had contacted Marcus, who'd escaped the meeting when things went bad, and he was coordinating with Paolo's people for a synchronized assault. This is insane, Rebecca muttered, checking her weapons for the third time. We're walking into a trap with minimal backup against the Russian mob. You didn't have to come. Yes, I did. It's my job. Rebecca met her eyes in the rear-view mirror. Besides, Adrian would haunt me forever if I let anything happen to you. The address led to a massive warehouse complex on the waterfront, the kind of place where ships used to unload cargo before the neighborhood died. Now it was just empty buildings and broken dreams, perfect for the kind of violence that couldn't happen in populated areas. Paolo was waiting with 4 men, all heavily armed. He looked at Elena with something that might have been respect. You've got guts coming here. Stupid guts, but guts. He handed her a bulletproof vest. Put this on. What's the plan? My guys and Rebecca's team create a distraction at the front. You and I go in the back, find Adrian, get him out. Paolo's expression was grim. This is going to be ugly. The Bratva doesn't take prisoners, and they sure as hell don't let people walk away. Then we don't give them a choice. They moved into position. Elena's heart was trying to beat out of her chest, adrenaline making everything sharp and bright and terrifying. She'd never held a gun before, never imagined she'd be sneaking into a warehouse to rescue the crime boss she'd accidentally married and definitely fallen in love with. Life was strange. Paolo led her around the back of the building, moving with the practiced silence of someone who'd done this before. They found an unlocked door, too easy, definitely a trap, and slipped inside. The warehouse was enormous, filled with rusted machinery and shadows. Voices echoed from somewhere ahead, speaking Russian. Paolo held up a hand, signaling Elena to wait while he scouted. Gunfire erupted from the front of the building, Rebecca's distraction. The voices ahead shouted, and footsteps ran toward the sound. Now, Paolo hissed. They moved deeper into the warehouse, and that's when Elena saw him. Adrian was tied to a chair in the center of a cleared space, blood streaming from a cut above his eye, his shirt torn. 3 men surrounded him, guns drawn, but attention focused on the firefight echoing from the front of the building. Elena started forward, but Paolo grabbed her arm. Wait, we need a clean shot. There are 3 of them, and 2 of us. Trust me. Paolo raised his weapon, sighted carefully, and fired. The shot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space. One of the guards dropped. Paolo fired twice more in quick succession. 2 more bodies hit the ground before the men even registered they were under attack. Go! Paolo shouted. Elena ran to Adrian, her hands shaking as she worked at the ropes binding him. His eyes focused on her with difficulty, and she could see he'd been beaten badly. Elena, what are you? You shouldn't be here. Shut up and let me save you for once. She got one hand free, then the other. Adrian sagged forward, and she caught him, barely keeping them both upright. More gunfire. Paolo fired at shapes moving in the shadows, providing cover. We need to move now! Adrian forced himself to stand, leaning heavily on Elena. They staggered toward the back door with Paolo guarding their retreat, and Elena thought they might actually make it. Then a voice rang out, sharp with command. Stop, or I kill all of you right now. They froze. A man stepped out of the shadows, flanked by 6 armed guards. He was older, 50s maybe, with steel gray hair and the cold eyes of someone who'd done terrible things without losing sleep. Mrs. De Lorenzo, how kind of you to join us. He spoke perfect English with just a trace of an accent. "I am Dmitry Kozlov. I believe you've caused me considerable trouble." "Let them go," Elena said, positioning herself between the man and Adrian. "Your fight is with me, not them. My fight is with whoever threatens my operations. Your husband has been asking dangerous questions, interfering in business that doesn't concern him." Dmitry moved closer. "And you, my dear, became a problem the moment Thomas Brennan decided to steal from me." "Thomas stole from Adrian, not you." "Thomas stole money I was laundering through Adrian's organization, money that belonged to very dangerous people who don't forgive losses." Dmitry smiled without warmth. "When he created evidence framing you, it was almost convenient. I could eliminate the thieves, frame De Lorenzo's wife, and watch his organization tear itself apart from the inside." "Who helped you?" Adrian's voice was rough but steady. "Who in my organization is working with you? You'll die wondering." Dmitry raised his gun, pointing it at Elena. "But first, I think I'll take something from you the way you've taken from me." Everything happened at once. Paolo fired. Dmitry's guards returned fire, and Adrian threw himself in front of Elena, taking her to the ground as bullets whined overhead. She hit the concrete hard. The breath knocked from her lungs, Adrian's weight pressing her down protectively. More gunfire, shouting in Russian and English. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All she could do was hold on to Adrian while the world exploded around them. Then sudden silence, broken only by ringing ears and ragged breathing. "Clear!" Marcus's voice. "Building is clear!" Adrian rolled off Elena, pulling her up with gentle hands. "Are you hurt? The baby?" "I'm fine. We're fine." She checked him over frantically. "You're bleeding." "Flesh wounds, nothing serious." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like he'd never let go. "You came for me. You walked into a death trap to save me." "Of course I did. I love you." The words hung between them, the first time either had said it plainly. Adrian's eyes were wet as he kissed her, deep and desperate and alive. "I love you too," he said against her mouth. "So much it terrifies me." Marcus appeared, weapon still drawn, surveying the carnage. "Dmitry Kozlov is dead. Paolo took a bullet to the shoulder, but he'll live. Most of the Bratva soldiers are down." "The traitor," Adrian said immediately. "Did anyone from my organization—" "James found him." Marcus's expression was grim. "It was Peter Morrison, your attorney. He was coordinating with the Bratva the whole time, using his access to embed their operation in your businesses." Adrian closed his eyes, pain flashing across his face. 10 years. He'd trusted Peter Morrison for 10 years, and the man had been betraying him the entire time. "Where is he now?" "James has him secured, waiting for your orders." Adrian helped Elena to her feet, keeping one arm around her protectively. They made their way out of the warehouse, past bodies and bullet casings and the wreckage of the trap that should have killed them both. Outside, police sirens wailed in the distance. Paolo sat against a car, shirt soaked with blood, while one of his men worked on his shoulder. "You saved our lives," Elena said to him. "We're even now. You helped me find out who killed Vincent." Paolo winced as the pressure bandage was tightened. Kozlov had Vincent executed because he and Thomas were stealing from the laundering operation. It was never about De Lorenzo's money. "I'm sorry about your brother." "So am I." Paolo met Adrian's eyes. "We square? No more bad blood between us?" "We're square." Adrian offered his hand. Paolo shook it, sealing a peace born from fire and blood. The warehouse had been the Bratva's headquarters for their laundering operation. Inside, James had found Peter Morrison trying to destroy evidence, computer files, financial records, everything that would prove his betrayal. He'd confessed under pressure, admitted to helping the Kozlov family infiltrate Adrian's organization, to creating the false evidence against Elena when Thomas and Vincent's theft threatened to expose the whole scheme. "What do you want me to do with him?" James asked when they returned to the penthouse hours later. Adrian looked at Elena, at the woman carrying his child, the woman who'd risked everything to save him, then back at James. "Turn him over to the authorities. All the evidence, all his crimes. Let the legal system handle it." James blinked in surprise. "Boss, he betrayed you. The usual response." The usual response makes me no different from Dmitry Kozlov, from all the monsters I've spent my life fighting. Adrian pulled Elena close. I'm done with that life. Done with the violence and revenge and darkness. We're going to build something better. In the days that followed, the transformation began. Adrian met with federal prosecutors, turned over everything his organization had on the Bratva's operations. The resulting investigation dismantled one of the largest money laundering schemes in the country. Peter Morrison was arrested and charged with enough crimes to ensure he'd die in prison. The evidence against Elena was exposed as fraudulent. Her name was cleared publicly, the accounts in her name proven to be fabrications. The woman in the bank surveillance footage was identified as a paid actor, part of the elaborate frame job. Adrian began the slow process of legitimizing his business operations, separating legal enterprises from the criminal activities that had built his empire. It would take years, cost him allies and territory. But every morning he woke up beside Elena, felt her growing belly where their daughter was forming, and knew it was worth it. 3 weeks after this warehouse, they visited Elena's mother at her care facility. The older woman was having one of her good days, lucid and present. Elena held her hand and told her about the baby, about the husband who'd started as a stranger but become her whole world. You love him, her mother said, seeing past the complicated story to the simple truth beneath. I do, more than I thought possible. Then that's all that matters. Her mother squeezed her hand. Your father would be happy for you. He always said you deserve someone who'd fight for you. Adrian certainly does that. They stayed for hours, talking and laughing and sharing the small joys that had been stolen by illness and debt. When they finally left, Adrian wrapped Elena in his coat against the December cold. Thank you, she said. For what? For the upgraded care, the private nurses, everything you've done for her. Elena looked up at him. For helping me protect the people I love. It's what family does. Family. Such a simple word for something so profound. As they drove home through the city, Elena thought about how far she'd come. 6 months ago, she'd been desperate and alone, drowning in debt with no hope of rescue. She'd made a devil's bargain with a dangerous man, thinking it would be temporary, thinking she could keep her heart safe. Instead, she'd found love in the last place she'd expected, had discovered that the man everyone feared had been hiding the same loneliness she carried, had built a family from the wreckage of their broken lives. The threats weren't completely gone. There would always be enemies, always be danger. Adrian's past couldn't be erased overnight, and the world he'd lived in didn't let people go easily. But they were facing it together now, not as a fake marriage or business arrangement, but as partners choosing each other every single day. That night, safe in their penthouse, Adrian rested his head against Elena's stomach and felt their daughter kick for the first time. The wonder on his face made Elena's heart ache with love so fierce it was almost painful. She's strong, he said softly, like her mother. She'll need to be, with you as a father. I'm going to be better for her, for both of you. He looked up, eyes serious. I meant what I said about leaving the criminal life behind. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But I'm done being the monster everyone thinks I am. You were never a monster to me, Elena said, running her fingers through his hair. You were the man who saved my mother's life, who protected me when I had no one else, who chose love even when it made you vulnerable. You made me want to be better. No, I just helped you remember who you really were underneath all the armor. They fell asleep tangled together, two people who'd found home in each other's arms. Outside, the city glittered with infinite possibility, with the promise of new beginnings and second chances. The contract marriage that had brought them together was long forgotten. What remained was something real and hard-won, a love forged in fire, tested by violence, and proven stronger than any force trying to tear them apart. In the morning, they would start planning their real wedding, the one that mattered. They would begin building a life that honored both their pasts and their future. They would prepare for their daughter's arrival and all the joy and chaos she would bring. But tonight, they simply held each other and marveled at the impossible journey that had led them here. From strangers to spouses to something far more precious, two broken people who'd found exactly what they needed in each other. The story that had started with desperation and pretense was becoming something beautiful. And the best part, The part that made Elena's heart overflow with happiness was knowing this was just the beginning. Their real story, the one they would write together, was only just starting. 3 months later, Elena stood in front of a floor-length mirror in a suite at the Plaza Hotel, staring at her reflection with a mixture of wonder and disbelief. The wedding dress was ivory silk, custom-made to accommodate her 5-month pregnancy, flowing elegantly over the curve of her belly. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate style dotted with small white flowers, and diamond earrings, a gift from Adrian, caught the late March sunlight streaming through the windows. "You look beautiful," her mother said from the wheelchair beside her. The older woman's eyes were clear today, focused and present in a way that had become more frequent since Adrian had arranged for experimental treatments at a private clinic. "Like a princess from one of those movies you loved as a girl." Elena knelt carefully, taking her mother's hands. "I wish Dad could be here to see this." "He is, sweetheart. In here." Her mother touched Elena's chest right over her heart. "He'd be so proud of you, of how strong you've been, how you've turned something that started as survival into real love." It wasn't supposed to be like this. The first wedding was just paperwork in a courthouse. This one, Elena's voice caught. This one means everything. That's because you're not the same woman who walked into that courthouse 6 months ago. You fought for this, earned it, and that man waiting downstairs, he's fought for it too. Her mother smiled. That's what makes it real. A knock at the door interrupted them. Rebecca stepped in, elegant in a deep blue bridesmaid dress, her ever-present professionalism softened by genuine affection. "It's time," she said. "The guests are seated, and your groom is getting impatient." Elena laughed nervously. "Is he?" "Marcus says he's been checking his watch every 30 seconds for the last 10 minutes. Man's got it bad." Rebecca offered her arm. "Ready to make this official?" The ceremony was being held in the plaza's grand ballroom, transformed into a garden of white roses and soft candlelight. It was smaller than the elaborate society weddings Adrian could have arranged. Only 50 guests, mostly people who truly mattered. James and Marcus stood with Adrian at the altar. Paolo Russo was there with his girlfriend, having become an unexpected ally and something close to a friend. Elena's former co-workers from Mount Sinai filled several rows, tears already streaming down their faces. But as the doors opened and Elena began her walk down the aisle, arm linked with her mother's wheelchair, which Marcus pushed with gentle care, she only had eyes for Adrian. He stood at the end of the aisle in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, and the expression on his face when he saw her made Elena's breath catch. This was a man who'd built an empire on control and cold calculation, who'd made enemies tremble with a single look. But right now, watching his pregnant wife walk toward him in a wedding dress, Adrian De Lorenzo looked utterly undone. Tears streaked his face unashamedly. His hands trembled when Elena reached him and placed hers in his palms. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi yourself." His voice was rough with emotion. "You're so beautiful I can't breathe." "You're not so bad yourself." The officiant began the ceremony, but Elena barely heard the words. She was lost in Adrian's eyes, in the weight of this moment that was rewriting everything their relationship had been. The first wedding had been a transaction, a means to an end. This one was a choice, a conscious, deliberate decision to bind their lives together, not out of necessity, but out of love. "Adrian," the officiant said, "your vows." Adrian took a shaky breath. They'd agreed to write their own vows, and Elena saw him pull a folded paper from his pocket before changing his mind and tucking it away again. Whatever he'd prepared, he was abandoning it for something from the heart. "6 months ago, I hired you to play a role," he began, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "I needed a wife for appearances, and you needed money. It was supposed to be simple, clean, temporary. But you destroyed every wall I'd spent 15 years building. You saw past the reputation and the fear to the man underneath, and you didn't run. You stayed." Elena felt tears spilling down her own cheeks. "I've done terrible things in my life," Adrian continued. "Hurt people. Made choices I can't take back. I thought I'd lost the right to have something good, something pure. Then you walked into my world with your courage and your kindness and your absolutely terrible poker face, and suddenly I wanted to be better. Not for business or strategy or power. For you." His hands tightened on hers. "I'm not promising you a perfect life, Elena." My past has teeth, and there will be days when the darkness creeps back in. But I promise you this, I will love you with everything I am. I will protect you and our daughter with my last breath. I will work every single day to be the man you see when you look at me with those eyes that still make my heart stop. And I will thank whatever force in the universe brought you to me for the rest of my life. The room was silent except for the sound of soft crying. Elena took her own shaky breath, abandoned her carefully written vows just as Adrian had, and spoke from the raw truth of her heart. When I married you the first time, I thought I was selling part of myself to survive. I thought I could keep my heart safe, maintain distance, get through 6 months, and walk away unscathed. She laughed through her tears. I was so wrong. You didn't let me hide, didn't accept the careful walls I tried to maintain. You pushed and challenged and saw me, really saw me, in ways no one ever had. Adrian's thumb traced circles on her palm, a gesture of comfort that had become their private language. You made me feel safe when my whole world was falling apart. You gave my mother care and dignity when I couldn't afford either. You put your life on the line to protect mine, not because you had to, but because you chose to. Elena's voice strengthened, and somewhere in the middle of all that danger and chaos, I fell completely in love with you. Not the crime boss, not the dangerous man everyone fears, just Adrian. The man who cries at ultrasounds and brings me ginger tea at 3 in the morning and reads pregnancy books like he's studying for a final exam. Laughter rippled through the guests. Adrian grinned through his tears. So I promise you this, Elena continued. I will stand beside you as you build a better life, a legitimate legacy for our daughter. I will be your light when the darkness feels too heavy. I will love you on the hard days and the easy ones, when you're strong and when you're vulnerable. And I will remind you every single day that you deserve this happiness, this family, this love. Because you do, Adrian, you deserve all of it. The officiant was wiping his own eyes as he pronounced them husband and wife. Adrian pulled Elena into a kiss that was tender and fierce and filled with the promise of everything they were becoming together. The ballroom erupted in applause and cheers, but Elena barely heard it over the pounding of her heart. This was real. They were real. Everything that came before, the contract, the danger, the pretense, had been burned away, leaving only this truth: they belonged to each other. The reception was a blur of joy and laughter. Elena danced with Adrian, swaying carefully to accommodate her growing belly while their daughter kicked enthusiastically inside her as if celebrating too. She danced with Marcus, who admitted that he'd never seen Adrian this happy, and it was frankly unsettling in the best possible way. She danced with James, who promised that the last of Adrian's criminal operations had been shut down or transferred to legitimate ownership. He's really doing it, James said quietly, walking away from the life. I didn't think it was possible, but you made him believe he could be something else. He's making himself believe it, Elena corrected. I just reminded him who he really was underneath everything. Paolo approached as the evening wore on, looking uncomfortable in his suit but genuinely pleased. Congratulations, Mrs. De Lorenzo, the real kind this time. Thank you for coming, and for everything you did to help us. Yeah, well, he shifted awkwardly. Turns out you and your husband aren't as terrible as I thought, and Vincent would have liked knowing his death led to taking down the Bratvas operation. He always hated those guys. He'd be proud of you for helping. Paolo's eyes went distant. Maybe. I'm trying to make better choices, you know? Get out of the freelance violence business. Find something legitimate. Your husband's been helping with that, actually, offering me a job in his security consulting firm once he gets it fully licensed. Elena looked at Adrian across the room, deep in conversation with his attorney about the final legal steps in legitimizing his businesses. 3 months ago, she would have doubted his commitment to change, but she'd watched him work tirelessly to dismantle the criminal empire he'd built, to turn dirty money into legal investments, to transform from feared crime boss to respected businessman. It wasn't easy. Some of his former associates felt betrayed by his choice to go legitimate. Others tried to muscle in on the territory he was abandoning. But Adrian faced each challenge with the same ruthless efficiency he'd once used for darker purposes. And slowly, steadily, the transformation was taking hold. As the night wore on and guests began to leave, Elena found herself on the balcony overlooking Central Park, the city sparkling below like scattered diamonds. Adrian joined her, slipping his jacket around her shoulders against the cool spring air. Tired? He asked. Exhausted. Happy. Overwhelmed. She leaned into him. This was perfect, Adrian. Everything I never knew I wanted. Me too. He rested his hand on her belly, and their daughter immediately kicked against his palm. He laughed with delight. She's active tonight. She knows it's a special day. Have you thought any more about names? They'd been debating this for weeks. Elena wanted something strong but feminine. Adrian kept suggesting Italian names that connected their daughter to his heritage without binding her to his past. I keep coming back to Isabella, Elena said. Bella for short. It means devoted to what is good. Adrian was quiet for a moment, his hand still resting on her stomach where Isabella kicked and turned. It's perfect. She'll be our reminder that even from the darkest circumstances, something beautiful can grow. Exactly. Elena turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd become her entire world. I love you, husband. I love you, wife. He kissed her softly. Thank you for saving me. You saved me first. Then I guess we're even. They stood together on the balcony as the city breathed around them, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and chosen to build something real from the wreckage. Below them, their guests were leaving, heading back to their own lives and loves. Above them, stars fought to be seen through the light pollution of New York City. The next 3 months passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Adrian converted one of the penthouse bedrooms into a nursery, painting the walls himself in soft cream and filling it with carefully researched furniture that met every safety standard. Elena attended birthing classes with Rebecca as her partner when Adrian couldn't make it due to business meetings, though he tried to attend every single one. The transformation of his business empire continued. Adrian sold off the last of his questionable ventures, invested heavily in legitimate real estate and security consulting, and began working with federal prosecutors to provide information on other criminal organizations in exchange for immunity for his cooperation. It was a delicate balance, helping take down truly dangerous people while protecting those who'd worked for him and were trying to go straight. You're going to testify against the Moretti family? Elena asked one evening, reading over the documents his attorney had sent. They're trafficking women and children. That's a line I never crossed, and I won't protect people who do. Adrian's voice was hard. The feds want my testimony to take down their leadership. In exchange, I get complete immunity, and they help accelerate the legitimization of my remaining businesses. Will it be dangerous, testifying against them? I'll be in witness protection during the trial. You and Bella will be protected too, under a different protocol. James is coordinating everything. He pulled her close. I know it's not ideal, but this is the price of leaving my old life behind. I have to help clean up the mess I was part of. Elena understood, even if the thought of him testifying against the same people who'd once been his allies made her nervous. But this was Adrian choosing the right thing over the easy thing, choosing to use his knowledge to help rather than staying silent and complicit. Just promise me you'll be careful. Always. At 37 weeks pregnant, Elena woke in the middle of the night to her water breaking. Adrian, who'd been sleeping lightly for weeks in anticipation, was immediately alert. It's time? He asked, already moving to grab the hospital bag they'd packed weeks ago. I think so. The contractions aren't bad yet, but she gasped as a stronger one hit. Okay, they're getting worse. The drive to Mount Sinai took 20 minutes through empty 3 a.m. streets. Elena had chosen her old hospital for the delivery, wanting the familiar faces of doctors and nurses she'd worked alongside. The staff welcomed her with genuine warmth, remembering the girl who'd worked double shifts to care for her dying father. Adrian didn't leave her side for a second. He held her hand through contractions, wiped her face with cool cloths, breathed with her through the worst of the pain. At one point, when Elena was cursing his name and telling him this was all his fault, he just smiled and said, "You're right, and she's going to be worth every second." Isabella Rose de Lorenzo was born at 6:47 a.m. on a June morning, weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces. She came into the world screaming her displeasure at the indignity of birth, and Elena fell instantly, completely in love. Adrian held his daughter for the first time with shaking hands, This man who'd faced down armed enemies without flinching and wept openly at the miracle in his arms. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "She has your nose," Elena said, exhausted and elated. "And your eyes. Look at them. They're going to be brown like yours." They spent an hour just marveling at her, counting fingers and toes, watching her tiny face scrunch up and relax in sleep. Then the nurses took Isabella to the nursery for her checkup, and Adrian climbed carefully into the hospital bed beside Elena, holding her close. "Thank you," he said, "for her, for this, for everything. Thank you for being the kind of father she deserves, the kind of man I knew you could be." He kissed her forehead. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving you right." The next few days were a blur of feeding schedules, diaper changes, and adjusting to the reality of being parents. Elena's mother visited, lucid and overjoyed to meet her granddaughter. Marcus brought flowers that could have filled a florist shop. Rebecca came bearing practical gifts like burp cloths and infant first aid supplies. Even Paolo stopped by with an enormous stuffed bear and an awkward but sincere congratulations. When they brought Isabella home to the penthouse, reality truly set in. This tiny human depended on them completely. There would be sleepless nights and moments of doubt and the constant fear of making mistakes. But there would also be first smiles and tiny hands gripping their fingers and the overwhelming love that came with watching their daughter discover the world. Adrian proved to be a surprisingly natural father. He mastered diaper changes with military efficiency, could calm Isabella's crying with gentle rocking and softly sung Italian lullabies his own mother had taught him before she died. He took night feedings without complaint, often staying up with their daughter long after she'd fallen back asleep, just watching her breathe. "I never thought I'd have this," he admitted one night, holding a sleeping Isabella against his chest. "A family. Someone who looks at me and sees safety instead of fear." "She's lucky to have you as a father. I'm the lucky one. Both of you could have been killed because of my choices, my past. Instead, you're here, safe, giving me a second chance at life." "We're giving each other second chances," Elena corrected. "That's what love is, choosing each other over and over through all the messy, complicated parts." 3 months after Isabella's birth, Adrian testified against the Moretti family in federal court. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and during that time, Elena and Isabella stayed in a secure location with Rebecca and a full security team. It was nerve-wracking, but Adrian called every night with updates, and finally came the news. The Moretti leadership had been convicted on multiple counts and would spend the rest of their lives in prison. "It's done," Adrian said when he returned home, gathering his family in his arms. "The last tie to my old life is severed." "And now?" Elena asked. "Now we live. Really live. No more looking over our shoulders. No more waiting for the past to catch up with us." He kissed Isabella's head, then Elena's mouth. "Now we build the future we've been fighting for." That future took shape slowly but steadily. Adrian's security consulting firm became one of the most respected in the city, hired by corporations and wealthy individuals who valued his unique expertise. The money he'd made from criminal enterprises was invested in legitimate ventures, real estate, technology startups, philanthropic foundations that supported causes they cared about. Elena returned to nursing school part-time, finally able to finish her degree now that money wasn't a constant source of stress. She specialized in oncology, wanting to help families facing the same nightmare hers had endured. Between classes and clinical rotations and caring for Isabella, her days were full and exhausting and wonderful. They established the Vargas Foundation in her father's name, dedicated to helping families manage medical debt and access quality care regardless of their ability to pay. Elena's mother cut the ribbon at the opening ceremony and later told Elena that her father would have been so proud. Life wasn't perfect. Adrian still had nightmares sometimes, waking in a cold sweat from dreams where he lost Elena and Isabella to enemies who no longer existed. Elena occasionally felt overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood and school and being a wife to a man with such a complicated past. They argued about small things, whose turn it was to do dishes, whether Isabella should start daycare or stay with a nanny, how to balance their desire for privacy with the social obligations that came with Adrian's business. But they worked through it, learned to communicate better, to ask for help when they needed it, to remember that being partners meant carrying the weight together instead of alone. On their first anniversary, the real one, not the courthouse wedding, but the plaza ceremony that had meant everything, Adrian took Elena back to the same ballroom where they'd exchanged vows. But this time it was just the two of them and Isabella, who was learning to walk and delighted in toddling around the empty space. "I have something for you," Adrian said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a ring, not the simple band she'd worn during their contract marriage, but an intricate design of white gold and diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. "It's beautiful," Elena breathed. "I had it custom made. The stones are from jewelry my mother owned, the only thing of hers I kept. I wanted you to have them, to connect our daughter to the grandmother she'll never meet." He slipped the ring onto her finger beside her wedding band. "You gave me a family, Elena. Gave me a reason to be better than my worst choices. This doesn't come close to repaying that, but I wanted you to have something that shows how much you mean to me." Elena threw her arms around him, careful not to knock over Isabella, who was holding onto her leg. "I love it. I love you." "I love you too, both of you." He scooped up their daughter, who shrieked with delight. "My girls." They danced together in the empty ballroom, the three of them swaying to music only they could hear, and Elena marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate transaction to a real family. From two broken people to something whole and beautiful and strong. That night, after Isabella was asleep in her crib, and they were tangled together in bed, Adrian traced patterns on Elena's skin with gentle fingers. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Agreeing to that first arrangement? If you could go back, knowing everything that would happen, the danger, the fear, almost dying, would you still do it?" Elena thought about the question seriously. Thought about the terror of being framed and hunted, the horror of the warehouse, the constant stress of living in Adrian's world. But she also thought about falling in love with a man who'd fought to be worthy of that love, about holding their daughter for the first time, about the life they'd built from the wreckage of their worst circumstances. "Yes," she said finally, "I'd do it all again, every terrifying moment, every impossible choice, because it led to this, to us, to Isabella, to a life I never imagined I could have. Even if you'd known how hard it would be, especially because I knew how hard it would be. The things worth having are worth fighting for, Adrian. You taught me that." He pulled her closer, buried his face in her hair. "You saved my life. Not just that day in the warehouse. Every day since I met you. We saved each other. That's what partners do." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new challenges and joys. That parenthood and business and life would continue to throw obstacles in their path. But they would face it all together, these two people who'd found love in the most unlikely place and chosen to nurture it into something that would last forever. Years later, when Isabella was old enough to ask how her parents met, they would tell her a carefully edited version of the story. About a woman who needed help and a man who needed someone to trust him. About danger and courage and the choice to love even when it seemed impossible. About second chances and redemption and building something beautiful from broken pieces. They would tell her that love isn't always easy or safe, that sometimes it requires the courage to see past someone's worst choices to their best intentions. That family can be formed in unconventional ways and still be real, still be strong. But most of all, they would tell her that she was wanted, that her parents had fought through hell to create a world where she could grow up safe and loved and free from the darkness that had once threatened to consume them both. The contract marriage that had started Elena and Adrian's story was long forgotten, replaced by a love that had been tested by fire and proven unbreakable. What remained was a family built on choice and commitment, on two people who'd been brave enough to let down their walls and trust each other with their most vulnerable selves. In the end, that was the greatest gift they gave each other. Not the money or security, or even the daughter who would grow up to be as strong and brave as both her parents. The gift was simply this: the chance to be loved completely, despite and because of all their flaws and scars and complicated pasts. And that gift, freely given and gratefully received, made all the difference. As Isabella grew, she would see her parents' love manifest in 1,000 small ways. In her father teaching her mother to waltz in the kitchen while dinner burned, in her mother holding her father through nightmares that still occasionally haunted him, and both of them working tirelessly to build a better world, not just for their own daughter, but for all the families struggling the way they once had. She would see her father's transformation from feared crime boss to respected businessman and philanthropist, and know that people could change when they had the right motivation. She would see her mother's determination to help others avoid the medical debt trap that had almost destroyed their family, and learn the power of turning pain into purpose. And maybe, when she was old enough to understand the full complexity of their story, Isabella would realize that her parents' greatest achievement wasn't the business they'd built, or the money they'd donated, or even the foundation that bore her grandfather's name. Their greatest achievement was simply choosing each other, again and again, through every trial and triumph. Was building a love so strong that it transformed them both into better versions of themselves. Was creating a family that proved redemption was possible and second chances were real. That was the legacy they were building, not in boardrooms or courtrooms or charity galas, but in quiet moments of connection, in promises kept and trust earned, in the simple revolutionary act of loving each other completely. And as the years unfolded and their story continued, that legacy would ripple outward in ways they couldn't predict. Former associates would see Adrian's transformation and believe they too could leave the criminal life behind. Families drowning in medical debt would find help through the Vargas Foundation and know that someone understood their struggle. People who'd lost hope would look at Elena and Adrian's journey and remember that sometimes the darkest nights precede the brightest dawns. But on this anniversary night, with their daughter asleep down the hall and the city lights sparkling beyond the windows, Elena and Adrian simply held each other and marveled at how far they'd come, from strangers to spouses to partners to parents, from a contract marriage meant to end to a real love that would endure forever, from two broken people barely surviving to a family thriving beyond anything they'd imagined possible. It was a story that shouldn't have worked, that defied every rule about how love was supposed to happen. But it was their story, written in courage and blood and tears and ultimately joy. And neither of them would change a single chapter.